day, everybody, and welcome to Bardcast, episode 2, in a continuing series of 624 Bardcasts, Goddess willing. It's September 6th in the year 2020 of the famously improved, but still slightly off Gregorian calendar. Each day of the year has a unique Shakespeare sonnet number connected to it, and I shall explain how that works a little later on. Today's is sonnet 85, which starts, "My tongue-tied muse." But I guarantee you there will be no tongue-tied muse happening today, because my guest is one of the most astoundingly eloquent and riveting speakers I've ever witnessed. That beautiful haunting music you just heard is a track called Onomatopoet. Onomatopoet. Love it. Onomatopoeic. From a band called Zilla, who are Aaron Holstein, Michael Travis, and my guest today, the amazing Mr. Jamie Janover. You can hear more of his music all for free at jamiejanover.com. Check it out. He's as knowledgeable about science as he is about music, or religions, or ancient civilizations, or sacred geometry, or you name it. You're going to find out today how fortunate you are, and I both are, to spend a while with him, because it isn't every day you meet someone who has invented and built a totally unique drum kit specifically so that he can play it while riding a bike in order to travel around entertaining everyone at Burning Man year after year. But yep, my guest today has done that. It also isn't every day you meet someone who can play hammered dulcimer like Keith Jarrett plays piano, but my guest today was the national hammered dulcimer champion back in 2002 when he was literally reinventing the way hammered dulcimer is played. And it isn't every day you meet someone who can explain the unified field theory to you for 4 hours and you're still awake. Not just awake, but chafing at the bit to hear more. I know, because I was there in Egypt last March when Jamie Janover did exactly that. Jamie is one of the most fascinating and sincere artists I've known, and one of the most attractive qualities he has is that rare thing today, humility. Because although he could easily have forged his own career as a speaker on the science meets spirituality, new agey, culty circuit, he chose to focus selflessly on explaining and promoting the works of someone else, physicist Nassim Haramein, whose unified field theory may well have completed what Einstein left incomplete at his passing. As a musician, Jamie is a veteran of hundreds of live guest appearances, having performed with Fish, Stanley Jordan, Bella Fleck, String Cheese Incident, Derek Trucks, and many others. His work has been featured on the NPR radio programs All Things Considered and New Sounds. He's also a professional photographer, a nature sculptor, and I'm truly honored to have Jamie as my guest on the Bardcast. Today, to share his revolutionary world with us, we're going to learn a lot today. So, it's my great pleasure to introduce, please put your emojis together for my dear friend, Jamie Janover. Hey, Jamie.
Thank you so much, Alan. It's an honor to get introduced by you like that. That was a treat. Coming from somebody who has so much experience and has blown my mind many times over. Really appreciate that intro.
Hey, it's my pleasure putting it together. Who cares that I didn't get any sleep? It's you start looking up you. I mean, I've known for all of you listening and watching, I've known Jamie now over a year, and what a ride it's been. But you can't know Jamie without doing a deep dive. And, you know, we're all doing our various things. And so I haven't done a really deep dive to even look up what else he'd done besides the amazing things that I knew about, which we'll get into today, which is how it all connects, how his amazingly beautiful, eloquent view of the world and science meets spirituality is at the same time deeply connected to what this show, I hope, is about in general, which is connecting it to Shakespeare. And how did Shakespeare know all this 400 years ago? And what was his purpose in bringing it through to us in a very covert way? Because he had to do it in a covert way. He had to code it. Back then, even doing mathematics was a dark art. You could be burned for doing much more complicated than, say, the 9 times table. So it's we're going to get deeply into all of that. But I just want to say, yes, it was a thrill checking you out, and I hope everybody does the same, because Jamie is one special human being, though he himself will say that that's an oxymoron. There's nothing special about any of us because we're all extra special. So Jamie and I met in Peru on a Nassim Haramein resonance tour. And I all I can remember, I just want to start it off with this, is how I had done my presentation that night, and I get off the stage and I'm introduced to Jamie, and I think it was Adam, wasn't it? Adam Apollo, or was it Marshall Leffers? I can't. It was you and was it you and
Adam's there, yeah.
Adam, yeah. And you came up to me. I didn't know either of you really. We might have just met, you know, momentarily before on the tour. And the first thing Jamie does, as he does, is just say, how can I help you? How can I help bring what you just did to more people? You know, it's the most generous introduction you can get. You just go, wow, a human being human. It was really beautiful. It touched me deeply. And from that moment on, he has been helping me. And I'm forever deeply grateful for that. So what's your memory of that, Jamie? Can you tell us?
Well, you guys have to realize we're on a Resonance Science Foundation travel expedition in Peru. So there's 150 of us in a big hotel conference room, and we get a full hour and something presentation from Robert Edward Grant, who blows all of our minds. And then there was another full hour and a half presentation with Alan Green, who also blew our minds. And I can't really tell you too much about what was said because it's so deep. Just to say that Robert kind of finalized his presentation with an image that was kind of a summary of his whole thing. And at the end of Alan's, he also had an image that like tied together everything, all these codes, all this information, super deep. And then Alan goes like this, and he puts his final image and Robert's on top of each other. and it perfectly matches. And the whole room just kind of melts. And it was just like, it was one of those moments that you have where you hear something that you know is super deep and super true, and you get the biggest truth bumps you've ever gotten, and the hair stands up on your body, and you're like, I don't exactly fully 100% understand, or nor could I remember everything that I just saw, but just completely blew my mind. It reminded me of seeing Nassim Haramein for the first time, and that's when Adam and I were looking at each other like, you got to be kidding me. So I went up to Alan and Robert and was like, you guys, whatever I could do to help you guys get that to the people, because they were preaching to the choir. They were preaching to people that already know all about Nassim's unified field theory, know a lot about this information. And even then, we were all just hanging on, just trying to like connect so many dots that got presented in such a short amount of time. But I have had so much experience already listening to that kind of stuff that quite a few of them connected for me. And I was like, oh, no way. If that's true, if that's correct, then this is such a game changer that it's actually a very important mission to make sure this information gets out there. And that's what I've been doing for years, because I see people like Nassim and Alan and Robert and Graham Hancock and a bunch of others, right, that you've seen too. And they say stuff that you know is super potent and super important. You also know that the mainstream view is far enough away from what they're saying that they're going to kind of have to go against the stream a little bit. And so that involves some extra explanation, because it's not just obvious. You have to kind of do a process, and it's time consuming, and it's persistence. You know, science and philosophy doesn't usually change on a dime. It's a very gradual process. And so I think Alan is contributing an incredible new piece to the giant puzzle that is, how does everything work and how do we get here? And tying it into this ancient manuscript history involved going back through so many different characters, like especially Shakespeare and people like Da Vinci. And it's like, wait, how did those guys know that? And then it leads to the big questions, the same kind of big questions that Nassim's work leads to, because it's all connected. And that's why I felt like it was important to help Alan to get his information, and Alan to get your information out there, because it needs to be seen by a lot of people. So hopefully this is an important seed germination moment here of you starting this Bardcast, and that we'll fondly look back on the early days before everybody knew the whole story of Shakespeare, and you are a notorious character in history for unearthing it.
Notorious, yeah, that would be good.
Good notorious.
Yeah.
Notorious,
well,
like Einstein is for like blowing the lid on everything everybody thought before that.
Well, we're all laborers in the field, in the star fields, perhaps, tilling the same bits of soil and going, oh, look what I got. Oh, look what I got. You know, you got this. I got this. It just never ceases to amaze me how all of the connection is happening so fast now. Jamie and I work with Robert Edward Grant, and we have this what's called a mathemagician's talk every Thursday, a Zoom call for a couple of hours, sometimes 3 or 4 hours, where Robert gives us his latest stuff, and I will occasionally throw something together, and others like Jono Leaf and Michael Evans and Adam Apollo, and they're all giving their pieces of the puzzle. And Jamie does that honestly like nobody else does. When I said can speak for 4 hours on unified field theory, it's true. I was there in Egypt, March. We were together in Egypt doing a tour that Robert had put together, but then Jamie had a separate gig booked on a certain day that was a day off, where he said, do you want to come along? I'm giving a talk at such and such a hotel. Can't remember the hotel, doesn't matter. And it was just, yeah, of course I want to come along. Yeah, I had known of you and your work, and we talked, but I'd never actually seen you give a presentation. So I go along, and I'm not kidding. It's 4 hours. It's 4 hours, ladies and gentlemen, on the meaning of the universe and everything in it. And all I could think of was seeing Bruce Springsteen when I was in my late 20s, not in a good place. I think it was in Earl's Court. His sound wasn't that good, so I couldn't hear all the lyrics. And I wasn't even a fan anyway. I just happened to get comped a ticket. It was before he was known to be the biggest thing in rock and roll, right? The future of rock and roll, it was called, right? And so not knowing the material is one thing. You'd think that would be a stumbling block. And I watched this Bruce Springsteen concert, and 4 hours later, I was cheering and cheering for more, as everybody was, because he gave so much. He gave you so much energy, right? That's the way performing works, isn't it? We're musicians, and we understand that. It's not a one-way street, folks. It's we're all playing together, whether you happen to be on the stage performing or whether you happen to be in the audience performing back with your energy and your response, you know? So as musicians, we fully understand that. So I hear Jamie giving this talk, and I'm going to ask him to do it now. I'd like you to sit back and relax for 4 hours while Jamie no, I won't do that. Jamie, the point about it is that after 4 hours, we were all going, give us more. It was like, what? And we had to get back. I forget why we had to get back for whatever. We had to run and get this.
You mean why we had to get back? We had to go for our private visit to the Great Pyramid of Giza is why we had to get back.
Oh, that's why. Yes. Oh, yeah, that as well. And and we did that as well. Because we had a night on the plateau where, thanks to Robert organizing this whole thing, we end up doing all inner chambers. We got to be in every inner chamber in the 3 pyramids all night long, 5 hours nonstop. We're in the King's Chamber, then we're in the central chamber of Khafre, the 2nd pyramid, then we're in the central chamber of Menkori, the 3rd pyramid, and we're toning and we're chanting and we're oming and we're just all blissed out doing our thing. So yeah, there was that. Yeah, I'd forgotten about that. Thanks. And so that's what we had to go do. But honestly, we were all wanting more. The thing about Jamie is, though, as part of that presentation, he will tell you, I can give you the 10-minute version. I can give you the elevator pitch. I can give you the 1.5-minute version. I can give you the 5-second version. I can give you anything between that and 4 hours. And 4 hours is not even, I mean, that's his kind of his baseline.
That's the Reader's Digest version of the Cliff Notes version of the Reader's Digest version.
So for right now, just so everybody gets a sense of it, give us a taste. What's the one you give for kids that would help a 5-year-old understand it?
I can give you the 2-second, you only have one stop on the elevator speech.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, this is a moment. Just pay attention. But first, I need to make one quick announcement. I need to share screen momentarily because I don't want to forget to do this. And this is only the 2nd Bardcast we've done, and we're getting all used to trying to get this thing going the right way. I have to tell you the following. That I want you to pay attention because the first one we did, we gave away a free signed book, one of these. I hope you can see that. If you can't see it, I got a picture of my new book here. I'm going to give a free signed book away. Oh no, that's the notes for the next book. Sorry. The book I'm giving away is this one, Decoding Shakespeare, signed by yours truly to the person who can answer a question that I will give later on in the show. And you'll only know the answer to that question if you have paid serious attention to what's going on. So that's a little clue. Don't let your attention drag. We need to keep on the ball here. So you're going to see something or hear something, and later on I'm going to say, by the way, the first person who can answer this in the comments correctly wins this book. So that's my paid political announcement. Jamie Janover now is going to give us the 2 or 3 second pitch for the meaning of the universe and everything.
It's more like 1 second.
Okay. Oh, wow. Okay.
So when somebody says to me, oh, I heard about that unified field theory thing that tells about unifying the universe or whatever, what's up with that? You can basically just say it as simply as there's a bunch of stuff and it's all connected. That's it. Done. Okay, that's my stop. I gotta go. Because sometimes you literally are on an elevator. Somebody says, oh, I like your shirt, and you have some geometry or something. What is that? And you're like, oh, it's the geometry of space-time. And you're like, what? And you're like, yeah, there's a bunch of stuff and it's all connected. Okay, bye. And then
there's
you're like,
a bunch of stuff and it's all connected. Remember that, folks.
And then the long version of what that is about 18 hours. And that's like, you know, what do you mean stuff? What is stuff? So define mass. Where does mass come from? So then you're like, well, there's mass in the universe. Where does the universe come from? So that's a very long thing to get into. And then, you know, it's all connected. It's like, what does connected mean? And how is it connected? Why is it connected? What is it in the first place? What are you talking about? That's a lot to explain. That short thing there's a lot of detail. It's called physics. And man, when you start talking about trying to explain physics to somebody who doesn't know a lot about physics, you got to start from the ground floor. Like, you understand what space-time is? No, not really. No one really understands what it is. So let's talk about that, because that's the one thing. If there's one thing that connects all the things, it's space. And most people are like, oh, really? Okay, that's that like empty stuff that's way out there in between the stars. And you're like, yeah. Mm-hmm. It's also everywhere, no matter how big you go or how small you go. So if you want to figure out the whole universe, you might want to pay attention to the 99.99999% of the universe that's space, because that's what it mostly is. That's what Nassim dug into. And so when he got into that and he started explaining it, makes sense. And then it points to a whole bunch of different stuff that's super disparate and different. And yet it all is connected to the same geometry. And it gets to the point where you're like, that cannot be a coincidence, which is the same thing Alan will do when he busts out Shakespeare and he starts going through and he's like, yeah, you see this? You see how many characters there are? You see this grid? You see how this matches this? And you're like, and you keep going, for a long time. And eventually he goes, you see how this is actually saying this? And you go, yeah, I see that. I cannot believe that I'm seeing that, but yes, I see that. Wow. And so, I mean, you guys, it's hard because like Alan will be on these math magician calls with us and he'll be like, oh yeah, I didn't sleep last night and check this out. And then he busts out this presentation that's so deep and so involved, and it's all new, like nothing that any of us have ever heard him talk about before. And it's like another layer and another layer and another layer. It just keeps going deeper and deeper. He's going fractal rabbit hole and unraveling stuff that leads to serious, crazy implications for everything from the royal family to the existence of civilization. I mean, it's unbelievable.
Well, let's try and zoom in on a little of that for some people who might be on this call who know nothing at all.
There's a lot of people that have no idea what I'm talking about.
Yeah, I'm going to give you a very brief thing. One of the first thing that I ask people to see if they're new to this work is something called Bard Code. the sonnets. So I'm going to give you a very, I mean, that in itself is a neat place to start. It's just a 13-minute video, and it shows you what's going on with this, which is the sonnets published in 1609. This is literally what it would have looked like. This is the size of it. It's a facsimile. There's only really 5 of this particular version in the world, obviously kept under hermetically sealed labs. But this is, you've got to, if you're going to get into the sonnets, you've got to get a transcription of the original, because there are so many mistakes in it that have all been corrected since 1609, and then you lose the entire meaning that the bard was trying to get across in the first place through those mistakes. Because after all, how do we learn in life, children? We learn through our mistakes. We don't learn much if we're having nothing but success. You know, it's all an easy ride and screw everybody else, I'm doing fine. You know, that's not a good way to learn. Stumble a bit and fall, and that's how we learn, obviously. And so I just wanted to give you not the utterly sped up version. There is a video online of CPAC, that's this Conference on Procession and Ancient Knowledge, 2019, that I just did just before Jamie and I went to India. We're going to talk about
that talk was a tour de force, Alan. I mean, especially the condensed part that you're talking about, where he condenses his.
Yeah, so I was thinking to do that, but I can't. I'm not going to do the utterly condensed. But for those of you who haven't seen any, I'm going to give you a very, very condensed version right now. So just let me share my screen, just to take you through that, so that you do understand a little of what we're really talking about here. This is called. This is going through. There's the cover of the that I showed you. Now we're looking at punctuation here, right? It looks like it's just punctuation, but in actual fact, the slope of this T here, this italic T, means it's a hint. Connect this dot up here and that, and you see it goes right alongside that T, and then you connect to the big dot G, and you've got a perfect right angle triangle. Now, this other dot here is directing us to the end of this line that's just hanging out there. But it's showing you, no, it's not just hanging out there. It's there for a purpose. Oh, perhaps we're supposed to connect that to that. Oh, you get another perfect right angle triangle, and another one here, and another one here at this dot, asply. And this one's not just any ordinary. This is a 3, 4, 5 triangle, which, kids, remember, Pythagorean theorem, 3, 4, 5 triangle, very important. Without it, we can't build the Gothic cathedrals or send spaceships to Mars or do much of anything really in terms of building. And so next step is, oh, there's a circle going all the way through that, connecting all of those points. That's interesting. Didn't suspect that. What is that circle telling us? Oh, you know what? That's a visual representation of something called Thales' theorem. Thales was Pythagoras' mentor, the guy that told Pythagoras, you got to go to Egypt, man. A lot of stuff there. You'll learn a ton of stuff. Go there. But Thales is more known for, he's the first guy to measure the height of the Great Pyramid, and he did it using triangles. And so there's a hint. Oh, pyramid. Well, that's interesting. Then you connect these other points where the circle crosses those lines, and you find that by measuring these very accurately, I'm working with the most accurate version, blown up 5 times size, original size. And all the math for this is on the website under Sonnets Math. For those who want to check it deeply, for those whose eyes glaze over, you can just pass by it and just accept my word for it. Because you've always got to please both audiences, you know. You've got to make it entertaining and move along. But there are those who are going to say, nah, I don't believe that. So for those, all the work is there that you can double check precisely down to 3 decimal places. This is accurate. This is giving you pi and E, Euler number, and Euler -1, and something called Brune's constant. Brune's constant wasn't even known until 1919, but there it is on the cover of the Sonnets in 1609. And these lines give you phi and inverted phi minus 1, which is from the Fibonacci series. And these lines give you something not many people know about the Fibonacci series, which is a variant of the Fibonacci. And these lines give you root 3, and it's inverse the Euler-Mascheroni constant. In other words, they're giving you all the most important constants that we know about in mathematics today, plus foot, cubit, and meter, when meter wasn't known at the time, right? And 5 of these were not known at the time, and yet there they are on the cover of the sonnets. What's all that doing there? You know, it's all done with 2 lines and 4 dots. If I said to, I don't know, Stephen Hawking, or I dare say even Einstein, or Archimedes, or Euclid, or anyone, I'd like you to put 2 lines on a piece of paper and 4 dots, and in those, in such a way that you sum up the entire history of geometry and mathematics, all the most important mathematical constants that we know of. Oh, and by the way, I'd also like it to have some poetic influence in the words that are around it, so that you say by G, well, G meant in those days in the Renaissance, the globe. It meant geodesy, measuring the globe. And there are these letters outside that circle, to be, and E to the east, and NE up there in the top left corner. By geodesy, to be, oh, to be measuring the earth. Maybe that's what they're meaning, measuring the earth. So this is meant to be the earth, and all these lines are radiating out from that big G dot, but there's a horizontal line here in the easterly direction, cued in by that E. Oh, I get it. And they're all radiating out, and these are actually very accurate. 20 degrees, 20 degrees. There's a tangent to the circle here. There's 20 degrees lining up with those other ends of those lines. But these 2 here are not accurate. You have to measure them by trigonometry. And so I'd like you all to do that right now, if you would. I'll give you the numbers. Here you go. Just kidding. This is to the north, oriented to the north of that baseline. This is oriented to the east of that baseline. Oh, maybe that's what this means, northeast. So, oh, perhaps they're longitude and latitude. That could be what's going on here. And so then you realize you put Google Earth and the rest is history. You have to get a band to play as fast as they can. Thus spake Zara. And I've forgotten where this is going now. Where's it going? Oh, yeah. Uh-huh. So you see, there's that.
That's insane.
And once you begin to wrap your head around that, it's a what? Right? It's just what? Why would he do that on a book of poetry? And who did it? Who done it? You can find out in this book. Win it today on this show. It's really a mind blower, and that for me was the start of. I'd already done 6 years work on discovering poetic codes, and then on around about December 20th, 21st, 2012, I don't know if that has any significance at all, I started to get some math stuff about this. And it told me, oh, he's hiding math in the poetry. And so that and then from then on, there was another 6 years of only math work. And then the last, what's left, about 4 years of that has been putting them together in the way that they did in those days, alchemy, because it's left brain, right? You can't have only the science, you can't have only the art, you've got to have both. You've got to have male and female, light and dark, yes and no. Jamie can tell you something about that. I think it might be connected to us all being the center of the universe or something. Jay, do you have any thoughts on that center of the universe thing?
I can tell you that what Alan just showed you is about 1% of the stuff that I've seen from him. And it's all crazy like that. The levels of encoding and how perceptive he had to be to find that stuff. And since he's done that, and since I met you in Peru and working with Robert has started unraveling things related to this that connect it to other things, which connect to other things, which then connect to Nassim's work. And then Alan goes, hey, look at this number. Doesn't that look familiar? And then Nassim goes, wait, what? How did you find that?
Wasn't that a wonderful day? Tell about that, because I thought about that in a while. We should touch on that.
There's numerous times and numerous meetings and Zoom, but there was one time where we were physically at Taurus Tech, which is Nassim's laboratory in Southern California. Big conference table with crazy meeting of the minds that included Alan and Nassim and Robert, Edward Grant, and other folks that work at Resonance Science Foundation, myself, Adam Apollo, Scott Brown was there, William Brown was there. Who else was there? But in any case, one by one, they went up and presented, here's the latest stuff that I was just finding. And then they go, hold on a second. And then they bring some of this and bring this. And then it would be like, we're all talking about the same numbers, the same stuff, but Alan's finding it through Shakespeare. Robert's deriving it just straight from geometry. And Dr. Olivier Alrol and Nassim Haramein were deriving it through their physics papers, which is a different way of deriving the stuff, because they're doing it through, you know, the history of physics, not just deriving it out of straight geometry, which is totally different than the way Alan is deriving information. And the levels of synchronicity down to stuff that has how many decimal places? 10 decimal places on Bruin's constant or something like that, Alan? Unbelievable.
No, on the one that we got that day, I had just been following up on something about Cuban sphere.
Yeah.
And it led to a number that ends up being what's called Lieb's constant. And it's not to 3 decimals or 10 decimals. You know, when I find a number in Shakespeare, and by that I mean he's embedded it in all kinds of ways. It's not just what you just saw on the sonnet's cover, where there's actual hidden geometry, but sometimes he does it with the sonnet numbers themselves. For instance, he tells us the speed of light through the sonnet numbers himself, right? I do have time to show you, but I'm not going to, because I want Jamie to share more of his stuff, and we've got a ton of stuff to get through about our visit in Egypt and with His Holiness, etc., etc. That's really important that we cover. But in a nutshell, it's I had intuited on that day, on the end of December in 2012. Wait a minute! I know he's put the speed of light into the sonnets. I don't know how I know, but I know. And I know that the way he would have done it would be the only way he can, which is through the sonnet numbers themselves. Each of the sonnets is numbered. Okay, what if he's done it with the word, look up the word speed in the sonnets. Oh, it only occurs in 3 places. Now, I knew from experience that if he only says something 3 times, it's important, right? Thoth, Hermes, Trismegistus, thrice great, 3 times, the Trinity. It's important. If I say something, I use a certain word 3 times in the overall sonnets. So he uses the word speed 3 times in sonnet 50 and 51 twice, 51 and 51. So 50/51 is the slope angle of the Great Pyramid. Well, that's interesting. And then you look at the first folio, which is this book of 36 plays of Shakespeare that is full of all wrong page numbers, right? And the very first wrong page number is on page 50. It goes from it goes from 48 to 49. Should be 50, but it's 58, and then 51. So he skips 50. And you go, wait a minute. So what's he saying down there at the bottom of what should be page 50, leading into 51? He says, here, here, here be my keys. Ascend my chambers. What? Oh, 3 chambers. Search, seek, find out. That's what he's saying. And you think, chambers, ascend, the ascending passageways. Oh, yeah, he's talking about the Great Pyramid because 50 and 51 again. So he uses the word speed in 50 and 51. He gets the page numbers wrong in the first folio to direct you to something. So you know, oh, okay, he's talking about the Great Pyramid. And you know, I hadn't yet then found that the Great Pyramid was on the cover of the sonnets yet. So you think, all right, maybe, where does he use the word light? Speed and light, yeah? So find the sonnets where he uses the word light. Speed of light, that's like a speed of light. It's a fraction, isn't it? A quarter of something, you'd have the 4 and, oh, so speed is underneath, light sonnets are on the top. You divide the speed sonnet numbers into the light sonnet numbers, it gives you a number. It's not the speed of light. You think, oh, well, I'm wrong. I'm wrong. Wait a minute, though. He's talking about the pyramid. Where does he mention pyramid? He only mentions pyramid once in the sonnets, in sonnet 1, 2, 3. Oh, so 1, 2, 3. Multiply that by 123, and you get a number. What is that number? It doesn't make sense until you realize, wait a minute, maybe he's working in biblical cubits. And it's the speed of light in cubits per second. You think, oh, what? And I don't mean close. I mean like 99.4% accurate. The nearest we got, of course, they didn't even know the speed of light back then in 1609, but along comes this guy Romeo, I think it is Romero, but whoever it was that got credit for discovering the speed of light, he becomes the guy. He's discovered the speed of light by measuring the Venus transit thing. He's 20% out, but he gets the credit. Shakespeare, 60 years earlier, is like 1/5% off with his sonnet numbers. So you realize something enormous is going on. And so the thing that happened then that day in Nassim's office is I'd been working on the relationship of sphere to cube, which I need to correct something about that in a moment, but so don't let me forget that. Sphere to cube. But it led to this particular equation, and I said, well, look at that, it gives us a number, and it's called Lieb's constant. And when I find a number it was from here that I got it, and you go, wait a minute, that's a really measurable number. Let me see if there's anything close to that I go online. Is there something close to that that's 3 decimals? Yes, there is. That's 10 decimals. Yes, there is. That's 50 decimals. Yes, the exact freaking number to an infinite number of decimals. And it's called Lieb's constant, and it's the point at which water freezes and its molecular structure turns into tetrahedrons. Right, and Nassim is kind of fond of tetrahedrons, I hear, and he goes, wait a minute, that's the number we've been looking for. Now that really makes your day, doesn't it? When Nassim says, oh, that's the number I've been looking for. I went, thank you, the gods of Shakespeare and mathematics, and because I didn't get it. I get all this from Shakespeare, right? It's just astounding. You must have had moments like that, Jamie, with Nassim.
I want to give your listeners a little perspective right now.
Yeah.
Okay, first of all, like he just said, we didn't really know the speed of light until recently, supposedly, right? But we now know from measurements of the Great Pyramid that the speed of light is encoded in the latitude of the Great Pyramid, and ratios of the size of the pyramid.
29.9792458 degrees north latitude. It's literally the same number as the speed of light in meters, which they also didn't know, right?
And Alan also, you guys, discovered that the relationship of the ratios between a meter, a cubit, and a foot are encoded in the proportions of the Great Pyramid. If the Great Pyramid was like 50 centimeters bigger on either side, it wouldn't work. It only is at these proportions. And so here you've got Alan Green going deep into Shakespeare for 16 years, you guys. 16 years he's been digging. And he comes up and he finds all this stuff. And people hear about it and are like, what? And so Robert Grant then gets a whole hit and a whole download and starts drawing all this stuff. And he's got notebooks and notebooks full of drawings. And somebody's like, whoa, what are you drawing? That looks... Somebody's like, have you ever heard of that guy Nassim Haramein? And he's like, who? What are you talking about? And they're like, you should probably talk to this guy. He's a physicist, you know, he's talking about geometry. And he's like, okay. So that's a long story, but he gets in touch with Nassim and they're like, oh, wait a minute. Hold on a second. And then Robert goes deep into all this stuff and comes to the Great Pyramid and then hears about Alan. And then Alan and Robert are like, hold on a second. And they're comparing notes. And then full circle, you've got Alan standing in front of Nassim and Robert and going through all this stuff and being like, Lieb's ice constant. And Nassim's like, wait, how did you get Lieb's ice constant? Because the transition of a phase of matter from liquid to solid is something that's very mysterious right now in the world. Everything is plasma unless it cooled down. And if it cooled down, it's not plasma anymore, it's liquid, solid, or gas. But 99.999% of the universe is plasma, stuff that stars are made of, right? So to have something as foundational as phase of matter transition relating to Shakespeare, relating to geometry, relating to the structure of space-time geometry, is like so many levels of beyond coincidence. And the beyond coincidence that these guys happen to find each other in the first place and have these conversations. And then to be being able to bear witness to this, you guys, and then have the responsibility of like, okay, tell people, get on social media and try to explain this because this is important stuff. And its reason it's important is we are doing a bunch of stuff all around the world right now in many aspects of our lives in society and technology that is totally goofy, to put it mildly. Like, we need to change the way we're doing stuff really, really soon. Like, we probably should have changed already. And how are we going to change? The way we're going to change is by understanding how stuff works. Once you understand how stuff works, you can be like, oh, maybe we shouldn't burn stuff anymore and put particulate into the atmosphere because now there's this thing called the sun. We could just like have a thing and then I could plug my phone into the sun. That's probably a lot better. And we only did that because we were like, oh, wonder what that weird thing is, that lightning bolt thing. And then somebody comes along, ooh, there's a mysterious force that you can't see and it's everywhere. And it's, you know, people are like, oh my God, that's scary. You're a witch. And you're like, no, I'm not a witch. It's called electromagnetism. It's going to be fun. And then we figured out, oh, you can get that mysterious thing into devices. And now I can just go blah, blah, blah into this little box that somehow listens to what I'm saying and transmits it to a satellite and back down and into your little box. I mean, that's unbelievable, first of all. Now we're going to be able to do that with another invisible field called gravity because we're going to understand space-time. And we're going to understand space-time because we make observations that connect all the dots and show that there is a foundational organization to everything. And it happens to be encoded by ancient civilizations and by Shakespeare and by geometry and by all these people all the way down the line. And now, because of understanding that, we can just pull energy right out of space, which is convenient because space is everywhere, no matter where you go at any scale. And once you do that, then we really can shift from messing up, like carbon pollution, for example, and go towards not messing up, which is everybody having way more fun and way less pain and suffering. And I think that's pretty
probably the preferable way to go. Yeah.
Universally, I think people can agree that they'd rather have fun than be miserable. And
let's take a vote on it. Who'd rather have fun, or who would rather carry on sinking back into the dark age?
And people are getting miserable just from the climate not being happy. I'm in Colorado right now. It's 95 degrees right now. And tomorrow it's going to be 92 degrees. And then the next day it's going to snow 6 inches.
Jamie sent me this text saying, laughing out loud.
Go look at the weather forecast for the Front Range of Colorado right now. And it's like, wait, it's Labor Day right now. I'm getting 6 inches of snow in the desert at 7,000 feet altitude. This is not supposed to happen. I'm going tangential a little bit, all to try to tie it back to the fact that Alan, Robert, Nassim, Graham Hancock, all these various researchers that are outside the box, because there's no boxes, are really breaking some ground. And it's important for us to, like, crowdsource style, make the change together collectively, because the institutions, if you're relying on the universities to change the physics books and be like, oh, whoops, dark matter doesn't exist, that's going to take a minute. But if we can get behind stuff like Thrive 2 movie that's coming out on September 26th, they're going to outline a whole bunch of new technologies in that movie. And if the whole world gets behind the technologies, then eventually somebody's going to be like, okay, here you go. And they're going to be like, boom, here's a device, and I'm powering my house off of it. And if I'm wrong about the physics, then how am I doing this? And that's going to be the real proof in the pudding, I think, is that we are having these kinds of devices that are showing that space is full of energy, and we're going to be able to pull energy out of space. And the clues that led to us getting to this were seated way back with the Great Pyramid and Shakespeare, which is like...
And way behind that, too.
And and far beyond that, we don't even know. We don't know what we don't know.
Wait. I mean, Shakespeare, whoever that was a guardian of truth, passing it along through secret initiatory societies like today they're known as the Freemasons. Back then they were known as the Rosicrucians. Prior to that it was the Templars. Prior to that it was the Egyptian mystery schools. Whatever it was always the divine makes sure that there's a group of people on the planet who are going to protect this as we go through our various cycles of great year. Precession of the equinox takes us through the yugas and golden ages and dark ages. And the interesting thing is we really are only just coming out of the dark ages. And so our knowledge of even of history really doesn't go back much beyond 2,000, 3,000. We're guessing much past there, which is all dark age stuff. It's all the darkest period that we're even have any memory of. And so is it any wonder that we have trolls saying, oh no, I don't buy that, put enough dots on a piece of paper and of course you're going to get triangles. I mean, no, that's not what I said. It's that concept of we're just coming out of such a dark period. And yet what's wonderful is that, as Jamie, you just mentioned, this is people are waking up all over the place. I literally got an email this morning, 3-4 hours ago, and I want to take it to, this connects to what we just said. I'm going to show you a video, but I want to give a shout out to someone I know of. I don't know him really personally. His name is Nala Berki. It's Alan but he uses his name backwards, A-L-A-N, Nala Berkey at SGD. I think it stands for Sacred Geometry. Oh, I should get this right. But anyway, look him up, please, because somebody sent me a video of his this morning in which he shows that he found the sphere cube thing before I did, and I was utterly unaware of it. And one of the things that I am completely painstakingly nitpicky about is you must give credit to the giant's shoulders that we're all standing on, whoever has done past work, you know. And so I had a video that was just going to come out. I'm going to show it to you now. This is a preview because it just shows literally what Jamie was talking about that in that meeting with Nassim, where I had shown the connection sphere to cube. But I feel embarrassed now because I'm going to have to change this. The narrator says it's a wonder that this was not found earlier. I'm going to let me just share screen and show it to you, and then I'll let you know that no, in fact, it was found earlier. So I'm going to change the narration on it and give credit to Nala because he deserves it. He knew it, but there again, you see, it's a synchronistic thing. He just happened to pluck it out of thin air whenever he did. This video that somebody sent me this morning was posted in 2018. Well, I got it in 2019, completely oblivious of his work. So I want him to know that he needs to be acknowledged for that. So I'm going to share the screen quickly, just a very short thing.
In 2016, Alan Green announced a startling discovery that the Great Pyramid embodies the long-sought universal constant of measure that Sir Isaac Newton had pursued all his life but failed to prove. Green revealed the precise pattern that connects the pyramid's basic proportions to the mathematical constants e and pi to an incredible level of accuracy. What made Green's discovery so significant is that he had simultaneously shown 12 of the most important math constants also present within the basic proportions of the pyramid. To compound the mystery, these were the exact same 12 constants he'd previously shown to be encoded in the title page of Shakespeare's sonnets. These revelations implied the rather inconvenient truth that the world's three leading measurement systems, biblical, imperial, and metrical, could not have been arrived at by pure chance. In vastly different cultures and at completely different moments in history, if there they were, staring us in the faces of the last remaining of the seven wonders of the ancient world. The question remained unresolved for 3 years. Was the universal constant of measure known to the builders of the Great Pyramid? Or were the world's most important measurement systems later derived from the pyramid proportions? But now the truth has been revealed, a truth so simple, it's astounding no one has previously noticed it. When a sphere is fit perfectly inside a cube, the sphere's volume compared to the cube's volume is exactly the ratio of cubit to meter, meaning the sphere represents the cubit and the cube represents the meter. If that's not enough, when a 1-foot cube is fit perfectly inside a sphere, the volume of the sphere is 2.72 feet. Subtract the volume of the cube from that of the sphere, and you get 1.72 feet, a mere 0.0024 off the cubit. The world's measurement systems were preordained within the most basic geometry imaginable, the relationship of the cube to sphere.
So you see the part that Nala had got was the sphere fitting into the cube, and I didn't know that. But that's I didn't know that he'd found it. I don't think he took it to the next step of then putting the cube back into another sphere, which then turns the whole thing around. Because then what actually happens is that sphere into cube, and then cube into sphere, and then sphere into cube, and cube into sphere becomes the foot to cubit relationship, the cubit to meter relationship, the meter back to foot. It becomes this whole thing that just spins around on itself like the Ouroboros swallowing its own tail. It's stunningly beautiful. And obviously, when you think of it, yes, it must be there in the most elegant, simple geometry of these most elemental Platonic solid, the cube, and the sphere, which is not really a Platonic solid because it's the ultimate, right, with no edges at all. But it's also brilliant, and I will change the narration on that to say Nala had found it. He's a great guy. I encourage everybody to look into his work. I had found what I called the universal constant of measure, that in the relationship of the basic structure of the pyramid, just literally by inventing a game for my piano students. I was playing with it one day and thinking, I wonder if I can draw. I wonder if I can connect all the points on a pyramid shape, all the 9 points around the base, 4 corners, 4 midpoints where it's tiny bit indented, the center, and the pyramidion. And you can do it by playing that game of moving a pencil around, and don't cross over, don't reverse, touch every point, never go back on yourself. What's the shortest distance you can do it? And I found out that once I'd done that, and you can work it out pretty quickly in an hour or so, it turned out that this was the foot, that was the cubit, and this was the meter. And we're just going, what? It's just nuts. But then it becomes even simpler because it's literally boiled down to first principles of geometry, cube sphere. That's all it is.
And that's embedded nested boundary conditions, which matches Nassim Haramein's unified field theory that dimensions are a scale. It's not an orientation in space, right? Mm. Our common 3 dimensions we think of as orientations in space, with time being the 4th dimension. And Nassim is redefining dimensions as, you've got a boundary condition like a cell, and inside there's smaller boundary conditions called atoms, and inside there's smaller boundary conditions called protons, and then there's quarks, and eventually you get to the Planck spherical unit, the shortest little measurable distance. Now there's sub-Plancks, right?
Must be, yeah.
Talked about with His Holiness. And then it goes bigger than the universe, right, to the multiverse. And it's all about relationships of volumes embedded like Russian dolls to infinity in both directions. Exactly, and yeah. Alan just discovered this universal constant that is this relationship of the volume of a sphere embedded inside of a cube, inside of a sphere, inside of a cube, inside of a sphere. And that's the squaring of the circle, and all this other geometry, flower of life, all this stuff comes out from that. It's just as foundational as you can get, because space is all there is. The study of structure in space is called geometry, and this is the geometry of geometry. It's just the most foundational thing. Like, the universe is just making spheres. That's all the universe does. The universe makes spheres, and they spin. That's all that is. There's just a field that's spinning with a bunch of spheres in it. That's what we're doing. And it doesn't look like, but I'm made of 100 trillion cells with 100 trillion atoms in each cell, and they're all spinning really fast, like speed of light style. That's crazy amount of organization. Mm-hmm. That's not a coincidence.
It blows your mind no matter which way you begin to think about it.
There's no not having your mind blown if you actually understand how bizarre everything is.
I want to show a clip of you and I on the Giza plateau before you gave your show.
That was a fun day.
We had this great day. We'd done a lot of stuff. It was very hectic getting everything in, but then Jamie says to me, we've got like half a day here. Do you want to just go to the Giza plateau? And I said, no, I'd rather just stay in and watch a movie in the hotel, really, like, who's going to say that? No, I didn't say that. I mean, but, that's the thing, the thought that comes to mind. We're in Cairo. For God's sake, yeah. Do I want to? Yes. So Jamie and I went alone, and he's filming. He's actually doing what we're doing now. I think you were live streaming on Facebook, right? And I've edited a little bit of this down because, of course, it was long, and you got interrupted even as you started by a trader wanting to sell us something, which is totally understandable. I mean, my God, that's their living, and their living has been decimated by various political factions, and they're having a horrible time over there. So it's both sides of the coin. It's really hard, but but Jamie's trying to go live and show the two sides of the pyramid. Let me show you this. It's really funny. It's not just funny. It's beautiful. The funny part is, which I won't show you, because but I loved the way it happened. Jamie is filming me, and as sometimes happens, I get on a rant, right? And I started a rant about infinity, right, and how shocking it is. And we're at the Menkori pyramid, and I'm just laying back on these cushiony pillows of stone at Menkori. But I want to. That's maybe we'll get to that as well. Here you go. Here's Jamie Janover going live from Giza.
Hey everybody, Great Pyramid is behind me, and then on this side, what they call the second pyramid or the Khafre pyramid. But this is the spot in between the first and second pyramid. The Great Pyramid's actually slightly taller than the middle pyramid, but it doesn't appear to be taller because the pyramid behind me over here is on a hill, slightly higher elevation. I'm here with my friend, the great Alan Green, goes by Bardcode on Facebook. And Alan is a great pyramid researcher. He's done a lot of work on the angles of the pyramid, encoding fundamental mathematical constants, and has also decoded the work of William Shakespeare and figured out that the sonnets that William Shakespeare wrote, the cover also encodes the geometry of the pyramid. So I'm honored to be here with Alan. How you doing?
Honored to be here with you, Jamie, too. Jamie's been giving presentations on this tour as well, and I'm blown away by everything he has to say. So it's a great thrill to be here. This is my third visit, and the deep thing is you learn more and more and more each time. So the revelations are coming thick and fast. It's really exciting. Nothing can compare, though, to just standing here between these pyramids. I mean, you can read all you want to about them and get into them. You can get into the math without actually being here, and all of that is overwhelmingly beautiful. But you just see it, and it's mind-boggling.
Oh, no, I'll go to this next one, because I actually have a question about this. You said something here, and I need to pick you up on it. You said this, Jamie.
Alan is a great pyramid researcher.
Now, did you mean Alan is a great pyramid researcher, or Alan's just a great pyramid researcher?
I was, of course, I was encoding both.
Oh, thanks for clarifying.
I learned a lot from you via Shakespeare how to encode messages in my speech.
Oh, I see. That's what you were doing. Okay. All right. I get it now. All right. Here's the next clip. Pay attention, folks. There might be something you need to pay attention here to.
This one's steeper than the Great Pyramid. Alan, what's the angle on this?
It's 53.13. It's a perfect 3-4-5 triangle cross section. It's Jean-Paul Beauval. That's his work. That should be attributed to Robert Royal's brother. I don't know if he's the person who discovered it, but he's the person I learned it from. And he's done a lot of work on this.
And the Great Pyramid is different.
51.8.
51.843.
That's the one that basically encodes 4 over pi or pi and square root of pi.
Perhaps there was a advanced civilization that was global, basically, and spread these techniques to people all over the world.
These lights, for instance, I mean, who built those?
These are ancient
Ancient
megalithic lights, yeah.
Yeah.
Pre-dynastic lights, actually, yeah, it's pre-cataclysm. I'm saying pre-cataclysm, of course,
because pre
the next cataclysm. I'm saying pre-cataclysm because there's a theory that, you know, there were a series of cataclysms because stuff happens in the universe, including comets and meteors and solar flares and all kinds of stuff. One of them, though, is one of the theories is that is this guy right here? Oh. Hi. Hi, Mr. Camel. Just wanted to hang out with Mr. Camel for a second. There's a theory that there was a comet that hit the surface of the planet 11,700 years ago-ish at the end of the last ice age, and created a very major global event where particulate was sent into the atmosphere. A lot of the solar radiation was blocked, and it made a whole bunch of ice that was covering North America flash vaporize into water, and it raised the sea levels on the planet by about 400 feet in a matter of days or weeks. And that would submerge all the cultures that were living on the sea anywhere, and that was a majority of the people. So we might have lost a lot of knowledge and a lot of information and a lot of labor of people being able to do stuff because there was hardly anybody left. And so we had to rebuild culture again from that point. And it might be encoded in Göbekli Tepe in Turkey on one of these giant T-shaped pillars because they show a constellation arrangement on what's known as the vulture stone that suggests maybe there was a cataclysm. But this is all pretty new information. It's only been in the last few years that we've started to figure this stuff out. So it's a fascinating time to be alive in general, and it's a very fascinating time to be here at this kind of an ancient site.
Got it.
I'm just glad that we got back in time. You know, we were there on March 1st. I think I got
Wasn't that stunning? Yeah, we literally just came in right under the wire. We get back and then COVID hit.
And I really feel for the Egyptians and everybody, but like they were just starting to really get their groove back in Egypt, and the tourists were starting to come back, and they were going to open up the museum. The new Egyptian museum was going to open next month, and now of course it's been put off. But I just want to say to everybody who happens to be watching this, if you ever get a chance to go to Egypt to check out all the stuff all over Egypt, all the sites, do it. It's so amazing, and the people are so sweet, and it's just phenomenal. Don't listen to anybody who tells you not to go because they're worried about something. Don't be worried. It's great. It's fine. Everything's awesome. The Egyptians are there waiting with open arms to feed you unbelievably good food and see some of the most historic, most important sites on the surface of the planet. And you can basically just fly to Cairo, get in a cab, say Great Pyramid, get out of the cab, pay $10, at least it used to be $10, walk for about 5 minutes and you're inside the Great Pyramid of Giza. And in another 5 minutes, you're in the King's Chamber of the Great Pyramid of Giza. Probably the most interesting, most important, and most mysterious room in any building in the history of the planet. So it's there, it's waiting. As soon as it's safe to travel, I'll see you there.
Yeah, it's an important plug. It's absolutely right, and Jamie's very accurate about that. The people are just the most beautiful, welcoming, loving people, and it's safe. I mean, people will tell you, "Oh, don't go; it's dangerous." Nah, it's probably more dangerous crossing the street in New York City than it is to wander around the streets in Cairo, and it's a great experience, and it will open your mind and blow your mind. But my segue from that clip, Jamie, is you were talking about a cataclysm. And as we know, cataclysms happen, and we just tend to think, well, that can't happen to me. You know, that's a biblical thing, right? What information do we have that is good? I don't want to get downer, but I do want to segue into how we were one of the greatest blessings of my life was on being on that trip with you and with Nassim and with Robert and a few others to Dharamsala, where we were invited. I mean, this itself is just mind-boggling, and it's hard to talk about because it's the worst kind of name dropping, right? Oh yeah, I was with the Dalai Lama. It's just awful, right? But we have to, yeah, it's a fact. It happened. How it happened, I have no idea. But he sent an emissary over, apparently to just search out certain individuals, and we got to be those individuals. And there's no doubt about it that the main thrust was we were all trying to decide ahead of time, because the emissary who the Lama who came over to tell us that the Dalai Lama wanted to see us said, you know, I've been arranging these private meetings with His Holiness for 30 years. So he knew everything about how all the protocol and the right way to do it, and this, that, and the other. But I want your view on what impression you came away with, Jamie, from that beautiful meeting. But I want us to lead into what you just led out with there. Stuff happens in the universe. Cataclysms happen. We tend to think, no, that cannot happen. But to jump to the end, and then let's go back to the beginning of the meeting with the Dalai Lama. But the end was he gave us our marching orders. He literally told us that the work that Nassim is doing is immensely important and can have ramifications for free energy, who knows for what, but certainly for healing all the ails of the world right now, if we can get over our greed, and if we can get over this idea that, oh no, it's not going to happen, let's leave it to our kids or our kids' kids. It's happening, folks, and that's why I wanted to put that particular clip in, not to be doomsdayish, but to be a call to action, because there could be no more important call to action than the one that His Holiness gave to us, which was to say, he said some just very, very beautiful things, but his main thrust was, we've got about 2 generations left. He said, in 70 years, this planet will be uninhabitable. So you better get going and better get doing and bringing this information, which, whether it comes from Nassim's work in physics or from Robert's work in mathematics, or it comes from Shakespeare telling us about it in advance 400 years ago to say, get smart. I know this stuff is important, and it's in look at the pyramid. It's telling you something. I mean, the message could not be clearer. So what's your take on that, Jamie, in terms of let's do the fun part first, getting over there and actually being in that room with His Holiness. What was your impression?
Well, first of all, had to be just about one of the greatest honors of my lifetime so far, to be a fly on the wall, to witness Alan and Robert and Nassim Haramein take turns explaining their work to His Holiness the Dalai Lama, with the Dalai Lama sitting in a chair with 2 translators, his senior translator and another translator who was learning, and us all sitting around in chairs. And the most striking was watching and witnessing and being able to tell His Holiness absorbing the information and getting lit up by it and seeing the dots connect in his head the way anybody would have the dots connect when they hear some of this stuff. And it getting to Nassim and to retell Nassim's telling of it a little bit. He had no idea how many minutes he had. And he'd been thinking about this for 30 years. Like he was in his van by himself. Before he had a foundation, before anything, in Joshua Tree, coming up with equations, thinking someday I want to explain this to somebody like the Dalai Lama. I bet he'd get it. Because, as we know, the ascended masters, or whatever you want to call them, spiritual people for thousands of years, have been saying things in the language that they had at the time before they invented physics. And now that we've invented physics and come up with the scientific method, we have an understanding of how things work. And we're like, actually, those guys were saying that same thing, but they were saying it in a more general esoteric kind of way. So Nassim was like, okay, here's my moment. I'm going to explain my theory that I've been working on for 30 years to His Holiness. And he just went at it, and he had charts, and he was showing him all this stuff. And he was like leaning over into it, and he's saying all this stuff. And at one point, Nassim was just like, yeah, and we found the smallest little particles that make up everything, you know, like kind of the pixels of our existence. And His Holiness was like, oh yeah, we have those in Buddhism called consciousness particles. And Sim is like, what? You have consciousness particles? And so then at one point, His Holiness had heard a lot, you know, and I can't go into, it's a lot of detail. I mean, it was hours. But at one point, His Holiness was like this. He's talking to Nassim, and he goes, puts his glasses down like that, looks at Nassim, he's like, yeah, but what keeps all those particles together? And it was almost like His Holiness was like, I've got Nassim now, I'm going to stump him on this one. And Nassim goes, oh yeah, we figured that out. It's angular momentum, it's a spin. And it was right then, I think, His Holiness went, hold on a second. And he goes, and he says a bunch of stuff in Tibetan, and we're all looking at each other. And then they all run off. And then he's like, oh yeah, I just told them to go make lunch for us.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh cool, we're gonna have lunch. I didn't know we were gonna have lunch. That's cool. And then we kept talking, and then we find out that's not a normal. You want to tell that part about it, Alan?
Well, I only know what Lama Tenzin said to us afterwards. He said, well, I've been doing this for 30 years, and we had all discussed in advance, you know, that we might not have a lot of time. I mean, the Lama said to us, well, he's invited you, so he obviously wants to hear. He's not going to usher you out in 10 minutes. But he said, I've seen how these things go, and if it's not going well, he'll just say, oh, thank you very much. Oh, very good. Oh, yeah, see you next time. You know, he'll get rid of you. So you know, be succinct. Don't go on unless he wants you to go on. So we had all said, well, you know, it's probably best not to lead with Robert's mathematics because, you know, Robert can go on, and it's probably best not to lead with Alan's Shakespeare because Alan can certainly go on. And so we are the go on twins. We tend to just go on a bit. And Nassim probably goes on too. I mean, I know he does his long talks, but we all agreed in advance, didn't we? We said, look, the thing to hit him with is Nassim has actually proven that the entire universe fits inside one proton. That's a big thing because His Holiness had a book out about 12 years ago called The Universe in a Single Atom. It's exactly the same concept, right? Omnipresence. Omniscience. The entire thing is here and everywhere here in every single proton, right? It's right. So that's the concept. So we thought, well, we know he will click on that. So we'll push Nassim forward. Let Nassim go. I'll give it a little bit of Shakespeare. Rob will give it a little bit of equations. Here's Nassim to tell him we just proved, not just my numbers show it, but that in 2013 we had the Large Hadron Collider at CERN run the experiment, and instead of the standard model, which is always like 4% out one way or the other, or I might have my numbers wrong on that, but you can correct me on that, Jamie, make a note. That Nassim's numbers were 0.0003% out, something like that, like pretty damn good. So good that probably it's the Large Hadron Collider that's wrong, not the numbers, because it's just not accurate enough. So he actually had his theory actually corroborated. And of course, the academics don't like that because he's not in the club and he's not a PhD. So I face the same thing in the Shakespeare world. You face the same thing. We all face the same thing. We're not, you know, we're not brought up through the right. Ooh, you didn't go to the right school. But nevertheless, I thought, so when he said that, the Dalai Lama turns to one of his translators and goes, he speaks very good English. I mean, it's not that he needs these translators, but occasionally a word or two, he'll want to sort it out. He talks and talks and talks, and then all the other lamas, there must have been 20 of them around, right? They all scurried like cockroaches out of a room when you switch the light on. I thought, what on earth happened? It was, he said something, we didn't know what he said, and then he carries on. And we're talking, and we're still talking, and we're still talking. We're thinking we'll get 45 minutes with him, and it's at an hour, you know. And then he suddenly says, right, let's go have lunch. And we're in his private quarters then, having lunch for another 3.5 hours. And what happened? And then Lama Tenzin told us afterwards, he said, well, what he said was, this is going to be longer conversation. Prepare lunch. And if it's not too self-serving, it's worth saying, because not for our own importance, but for the importance of the topic. Lama, who organizes these things, Lama Tenzin said, I've been doing this for 30 years, and he's only done that twice before. Once was Desmond Tutu, and once was Michelle Obama, where you got invited to lunch. Now we didn't know it was that special. Well, we did. I mean, we were all just humbled and blown. But you know, we're just sitting there like he's drinking tab and having potato chips, and you're thinking, oh, wow, I'm sitting in the Dalai Lama's table having, and they've prepared all this food, and it went on for a long, long time. But at the end, he said, you are the true scientist because you think you do not go here first and say, I got it all worked out, and only head and try to rule out the heart. He said, you go with your intuition. And that's certainly the way I work. And I know it's the way Nassim works and Robert works. It's all, and you and all the others that are on this amazing team. We intuit. We kind of know something here first. It resonates here. If it resonates here, then you know it's true. Then you can take it to the head level and work out all the details, right? So that's what he said. He said that's the right way to do it. And he said he's been having conferences in Dharamsala where he wanted to bring together the greatest minds in physics and philosophy and mathematics. But he said it doesn't always work out. Because they're all trying to rule. He doesn't use the word God. Buddhists don't say God, but you know, he's talking about the same thing, the divine, or whatever you want to call it, self. It's all ruled out of the mathematical equations. Let's have it be that we got something out of nothing, right? Let's just leave it at that. It's nothing. But what happened before the something? No, don't worry about that. It's the Big Bang. You can talk much more eloquently about that, Jamie, and I'd like you to. So that's what he said to it. He said, literally, we have very little time. He wasn't doomsday about it. He said, we can fix this, but the planet is in real terrible shape. And what you have got here is important, and it must be brought out to not just the general public, but to ways in which we can change the status quo. Now, so here's the interesting part, isn't it? We all came away from that thinking, well, that's great. How do we do that? We talked for a couple of days about, let's call it convergence. Let's organize. But then you think, well, you got to organize all the people. You got to get Deepak Chopra, and you got to get Oprah, and you got to get other, the big names who are going to attract more and more people, and pick a city, and you got to get all the hotels booked, and you got everyone's schedule be right together, and what's that going to cost, and how are we going to do it? Because the Dalai Lama said, he said, you do this and you get it together and it's a success. He said, we can take it to the United Nations. He said, we can take it to the United Nations, which means, him. He's got contact to the United Nations. He can go talk wherever he wants, right? So we were being given our marching orders. This is important, go do it. And we were thinking, well, that's hard. Now, not to minimize at all the pain that everyone is in right now as a result of this pandemic situation. It's painful. It's really, for most people, it's a disaster. At the same time, you've got to look at the rainbow behind the cloud of it. What is it allowing us to do? And from that perspective, all of a sudden, as you and I have just spoken about recently, Jamie, take the ball with that. What can we do now that we couldn't do before? Because we can do it on Zoom and it won't cost a thing.
Yeah, I mean, it's a tall order when the Dalai Lama looks at you as a group and says, sure, that's a really good idea. You should do that. Do a conference where science meets spirituality, and I'll join you. And we were like, okay, how are we going to do that? Because then Lama Tenzin's like, okay, well, His Holiness doesn't fly really far anymore. He'll fly some, but not really far. So we were like, where are we going to do this and all this? But if you can get a conference together with some, musicians, some scientists, His Holiness.
Well, we were told, I mean, let's just cut to the quick on that. Because honestly, seriously, there's no more important subject. There's no more important. I mean, if you're actually saying, my grandchildren might not have an earth to live on, that's pretty darned important. We know from history that it happens. Civilizations get wiped out and we start all over again. And to the divine, apparently, it's just a blink. Oh, well, we tried that. Let's try this. True, isn't it? I mean, if we are all the divine and get used to it, you are, we are. Nobody dies. Eternal. Soul is eternal. So you are it. And if we are it, and we don't use the power that we have got as it, then we should be ashamed to have let this moment go by and say, well, yeah, maybe there'll be another cataclysm, maybe there'll be another flood, maybe there will be a solar flare, maybe we'll be off the grid and we'll be back to the Stone Ages, maybe, all right. And we were this close to having utterly it all, the entire power of everything in a proton. Bam! There is no lack. There is no scarcity. It is all, sorry to say it, it's a game played by those who wish us to think there is scarcity and lack, and there is none. Now, we could not be at a more pregnant moment then to be able to do something about it. And all of a sudden, it's common. Everyone's getting used to doing what we're doing. Oh, let's meet by Zoom. All right. We could pull a conference together with 50 Zoomers or 200. I was just on one the other day with Mark Rylance, the most esteemed Shakespearean actor, the most esteemed actor, period, of this time on earth. He's really just known, recognized as the greatest living actor. And he was on a conference that he runs in London with about 250 Shakespeare fans, because he's passionate, absolutely passionate about this issue. Who was the real Shakespeare? And it was done like that. So everybody's zoomed in, we're all talking. we weren't all talking, most were listening, but Mark Rylance starts talking about John Dee, of all things. John Dee. Pay attention, you might win a book. John Dee, Decoding Shakespeare. And he went on for 15, 20 minutes and then encouraged everybody to look at this work because he recognizes it's important. Well, the reason I say all that is because we're now doing that. For whatever is the downside of COVID, there is this upside that all of a sudden it's entirely possible to pull this together with a few passionate people who say, hey, it's time, let's do it. Do you want to be on a show where the Dalai Lama has said, put it together and he will join us? Would you like to be on a Zoom with the Dalai Lama? Let me think. Gee, I'm busy next week. No one's going to say that. Nassim would delight in it. Who does Nassim know and love? You know, he's got 1 million followers, one of whom happens to be Sting, one of whom happens to be other name droppings that we could do. We can get we can get the world's top musicians together. We can get the world's top actors and Sir Mark Rylance. We can get the world's top people who all feel positively passionate about this and do something about it. And do you think it will flop? Do you think there'll be a sort of I don't know. If you can say, look, I've already been given the go ahead. I mean, what are we waiting for? What are we waiting for? We've been given the go ahead. Here he is. I'm going to show you a picture of His Holiness telling us, saying it like it is. And now I just want to show you this picture just to say, this is what he's like. He's sticking his tongue out at me. There's Nassim. He's utterly funny. He's sticking his tongue out because he just made a joke. And the joke was, he said, I asked him a very cheeky question, really, because by then we'd been at it for 3 hours and I felt as though, oh, well, we're just old friends. I could ask him anything, you know. The audacity. But actually, that's the truth, right? Why aren't we old friends? We are old friends. We could not be closer. We are the same being. There's only one of us. Why don't we feel like old friends? And so I said, you said about 12 years ago something that I can't be the first person to have commented on this, but I said, please, Your Holiness, tell us. You said that you might not reincarnate again. Now, the situation for people that don't necessarily know about that, these great souls come in tandems. You know, we all know about John the Baptist comes in to then announce that Jesus Christ is coming. And he says, I am just announcing that there's one is coming whose shoelaces I'm not worthy of touching on. Essentially paraphrasing, but that's the idea, right? And yet we know from the great sages of all Eastern religions that John the Baptist was an enlightened soul too. They just swap roles. It's just God in different t-shirts, right? And so it's the same thing in the Buddhist tradition. So you have the Dalai Lama and the Panchen Lama. The Dalai Lama incarnates when he was the 13th Dalai Lama, and he knows that the bad times are coming for Tibet. He makes a proclamation. He says terrible things are happening. So I am going to leave my body now earlier than I anticipated, so that I can reincarnate and so that I will be of an age that I can help more when the troubles come, because China is coming. And so he just leaves his body. It's called Mahasamadhi. 13th Dalai Lama just left his body consciously and then was laid in state, and his body was incorruptible. And during the time that it was laying in state, he turned his head The body turned its head to look to where a certain direction that they took as a sign to say, oh, this is where he's telling us he's going to reincarnate. And then he reincarnates as the 14th Dalai Lama, and that process goes on. And so by the time this man, the 14th Dalai Lama, was 15 years old, he was suddenly the head of the whole shebang. He had to be not just the spiritual head of the country, but the political head as well. And he had to go and negotiate with Chairman Mao. And it was not in good faith, and Mao never had any intention. And of course, he sends his armies in and basically massacres, I think it's 1.4 million, and razes to the ground over, I knew the numbers accurately, but I can't.
I think it was 14,000 monasteries.
Just razed to the ground. And the intention was to just erase Buddhism from the planet, the entire the race and the history. And of course, the Dalai Lama goes into exile and has been living in Dharamsala in northern India ever since, and has not been home in over 60 years. But he then has his counterpart is known as the Panchen Lama, who reincarnates maybe 30, 35 years later, who's going to recognize the next Dalai Lama, and the next Dalai Lama is going to recognize the next Panchen Lama, and they're sort of in a tandem. Now, whether you believe that or not is not the point. Whether you subscribe to it or not, that's the story, and the Tibetan Buddhists do believe it, of course, and he says to his people, you know what, I might not reincarnate, which is a shocking thing to say because he is a bodhisattva. The bodhisattva vow is, I will reincarnate over and over and over again, and so long as one single sentient being is in pain. Imagine, Yogananda said the same thing, the bodhisattva vow. Yogananda, Paramahansa Yogananda says in one of his poems, I will ply my boat, if need be, 1 trillion times, so long as one stray brother or sister is still in delusion. It's inconceivable what that means. Such unconditional love, a being that can stay in utter divine bliss for the rest of eternity, but knows that he or she cannot. Why? Because even going home to divine bliss recognizes, oh, the rest of me is still out there, and that's me. That's still me out there. I have to come back. There's no such thing as going home and resting on your laurels. So that's the Bodhisattva vow. And he says he will come back. And then he says to his people, I might not. So I actually asked him this very cheeky question. I said, that was a political move, wasn't it? Because by saying that, you know that the Chinese, he had named the next Panchen Lama. He had already named him. And 3 days later, the next day, that Panchen Lama that he named was kidnapped and has not been seen since. So the Chinese have him and they say, oh, he's fine. And he will choose the next Dalai Lama. And of course, he's a puppet. They've installed their own Panchen Lama. And they say that they will choose the next Dalai Lama. Well, that's the end, isn't it? That's it. You have a puppet Panchen Lama and a puppet Dalai Lama. So here this soul says, I might not reincarnate. Sends shockwaves through the Tibetan people. And I said, I think, did you say that in order to head them off at the pass in this? Because the point is, if the Chinese, when you pass, and the Chinese say, oh, we've chosen, our guy has chosen the next Dalai Lama, your people can then say, no, we don't accept that, because our guy said he wasn't going to reincarnate. Ah, trapped. And he looks at me with this sly look, and he says, oh, yes, yes, but I have done some internal investigation. I have now think Chinese getting much more clever, thinking good, thoughts about Buddhism good for economics and for business and for mind, and I think younger Chinese no longer so wrong, maybe I do go back eventually. So everything getting better. And he actually said this, you will remember, he said, I now think I will live to be 113. And when I do reincarnate, maybe not in India, maybe not in Tibet, maybe further west. And then he looks at me, because I'm the only English person in the room, and he goes, but not in Europe, huh? And he sticks his tongue out at me. And they capture this moment, literally. Like, get out of that, sorry. He goes, not in Europe. He's just a playful kid, and he literally, that's the truth of it. What he had done was, I've trapped them by saying I might not reincarnate, because now they can't win. They can't win politically, but if he lives to be 113, which he just said he might do, then problem solved. Nevertheless, the whole point is, that's the Bodhisattva vow. I'm going to come back as long as anyone is hurting. It is beyond normal human comprehension, but get used to it. That's the truth. Shakespeare says, in one of my favorite scenes in Twelfth Night, he assigns these words to, which should be a comfort to all of us. He assigns these words always to the fool, or to, in Twelfth Night, Sir Toby Belch, who's a drunkard, which is just perfect, you know. And this drunkard is walking around, and he says his lines in the scene, and then something happens, blah, 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 blah. And then as he's walking out, he just goes, oh, well, it's all one. It's all one. It's got nothing to do with the play, and people sometimes cut it out. And it happens 4 times. It's all one. Twice from the drunkard, twice from the clown, saying, ah, well, it's all one. There's only one. There's only one consciousness. There's only one of us pretending that we are different beings. It's terribly important. I just think, what are we waiting for? Please tell us your take on center of the universe rant. I just love it. Where I've seen you give that one. It sums this up. What is it about the center of the universe, Jamie?
Well, Nassim's theory says that the universe is both fractal and holographic. And most people are somewhat familiar with fractal, but holographic is hard to visualize because it's not very intuitive. In other words, holographic is that the part contains the whole and the whole contains the part, so that all the information of the whole universe is holographically encoded inside of a proton, essentially, because all black holes are connected and everything's a black hole, and all the black holes have singularities in their center, and all those singularities are the one thing that's connecting all the things, space-time itself. And so, if the universe is infinite and holographic, and it's just infinite boundary conditions going, you know, out infinitely, that means one of those multiverses has you as the exact center, which is pretty awesome, right? Because then you can have this feeling of like, wow, I'm actually the center of the universe. But it's very important to remember that so is everybody else, right? Everybody's the center of the universe.
Yeah.
You walk into a party, right, with the vibe that you're the only center of the universe, it's not going to go over so well. But if you go into a party being like, hey, what's up, all you other center of universes? Let's party. Then you get stuff like Burning Man, which should be happening right now. Normally, I'd be getting ready for the temple burn at Burning Man, which is actually more important than the man burning. And that's an interesting scenario too, where everybody's there and they are kind of all the center of the universe and they recognize this holographic field. And it means that if everybody's the center of the universe, something like discrimination and racism it already makes no sense, but it makes extra no sense. Like You're going to discriminate against the center of the universe? What are you doing? What's wrong with you? And that's why this whole thing is actually really important, is that the physics actually changes religion. Whew. And boy, religion needs some help. Not all religions and not all people in all religions, but certain people in certain religions, and actually it's more like certain people in almost every religion, get to a point where they are separating their view or their world from other things. And that's not possible because in the holographic infinite universe, there is no separation. There are no differences, really. If we are all one and it is all one thing, the more you try to separate something out, the more disconnected your whole worldview becomes. And it leads to some serious issues, which we are seeing play out on a daily basis. And when you start to get more into the like, oh, everything's connected. Okay, so you guys can pray like that, and I'll pray like this, because you play dubstep and you play opera. And okay. And the opera people are not hurting the dubstep people, and the dubstep people are not hurting the bluegrass people. Everybody can play different styles of music. They can all dance differently. They can all draw different pictures, and they can all pray differently. It's fine. Everybody pray however you want. Don't worry about it. You're all praying in your own way. And that is not the scene right now. Right now, there's people that are praying in one way, and then they're not happy that there's other people that are praying in another way. I hope that we learn that that's misguided and that we should let people be how they want to be. It's okay. If you're not hurting anybody, pray however you want. And so I'd like to see that happen, because I feel like that's going to lead towards the concept of festival Earth, where the whole planet is celebrating more or less and just having a good time. And sweet, I'm going to go to this other country because they're different over there, and I'm going to see their art and their music and their food and how they pray and everything. It's great. It's so different. And then I'm going to go over there and it's totally different. Let everybody be different. It's fine. And the lesson comes from physics. That's the weird thing. That's what the physics is saying. And so that's what the Ascended Masters are saying. That's what the physics is saying. And so it is time, Alan. You know, I'm excited because I just get to be part of the spreading of the word of resonant information. And what are we doing? I mean, we don't have a lot of time. So that's why I sit and spend a lot of time talking about this stuff and posting and presenting and podcasts, and playing music is kind of a version of that, right? If you can hit the zone in music, or you write a really good piece of literature, you could send somebody into a place where they feel more connected and they have insights and inspires them to connect more. Seems to me the more connected we get as a society and in technology and in our practices, the more we are being like the universe already is. And then you start to hit a resonance with the fundamental frequencies and the fundamental geometry and relationships in the universe. And when that happens, it feels really good. And you know when it's happening. I mean, I don't know if everybody knows, but when you're hitting the zone musically, or you're hitting the zone in a conversation, or
everybody everyone's experienced that, and it doesn't matter what gets you there. My first guest on Premier Bardcast 2 weeks ago, Professor Michael Delahoyd, said it beautifully. He said, you know, we all have a thing that gets us off, whether it's knitting or rock climbing or grooming our dog or it doesn't matter what it is, you know when you're doing it, it's the authentic you. You feel that you're being rooted in who you are. So that's the ultimate truth of it. You've got to be who you are. And if we cannot be who we are because someone else doesn't like it, then of course it's all going to fall apart. And that is really the root of a lot of our troubles. But this quest that you are asking for, like, why can't we all party together? It's probably been a question that's been going on for a while, I think. Maybe like forever. So what does that tell us about the I mean, how can we, I want to throw this open to everyone who's listening and watching. Please join in. Please give us your thoughts and comments. I can't be looking at them right now this minute, but I promise the moment we are off the air, I will look at everyone's comments and do my best to answer them. Alejandro, my dear friend and cohort here, who is part of putting all of this on, couldn't do it without him, and the other members of our group that is called Speed of Light Productions, which is Filiberto Mendoza and Ryan Sears and Melanie Sears. We all work passionately towards making this news available to everyone and sharing. It's just what Jamie's saying, you know, and it's obvious and we all know it. It just happens that by this really strange circumstance we find ourselves in now, curious and devastating as it is to some people, isn't it a window of possibility as well? Isn't it always such? You know, all challenges, the Chinese glyph or whatever it is they have, a character that says challenge is opportunity, crisis is opportunity. Of course it is. It just happens to be making something that we thought we couldn't do because we'd have to get all these people together in a certain place at a certain time on the right plane routes and the right hotels, and they've all got to be available. And now that is not even a consideration. You can just call up a ton of people and say, hey, let's have a Zoom next Wednesday afternoon, 2 p.m. Nassim will be on. Dalai Lama will be on. Maybe Sir Derek Jacobi, one of the great actors of our time, might be on. Maybe Mark Rylance will be on. Jamie and I will certainly be on.
I've made a lot of Facebook event invites before, Alan, but I look forward to making that Facebook event.
Well, why not? I mean, no. We must.
Special guests.
No, but all it takes is to say it. All it takes is to say, do it. He has even told us to do it, so that we shouldn't be shy about it. So I'm not going to harp on about that anymore. I'm going to remind you, everyone, we're not closing down here because I want to ask Jamie about how a lot more things, but I just want to give you this reminder again. If you want to win this book, this signed copy of Decoding Shakespeare, you have to answer a question, and that question is, if you were paying attention. So get ready to send in your comments. Alejandro is ready, waiting.
We already have 200 comments on that.
On what?
There's 200 comments so far on this feed.
Oh, really? Oh,
yeah,
wow.
I just went over and looked to see how many. There's 200.
Oh, okay, great. Well, like I say, I can't be dealing with them, but Alejandro's handling the ones that can be, but he will direct me to the ones that I need to answer. Personally, I'd love to answer them all personally, and I'll look through them all. But more importantly, right now, do you want to win this book? So, question is, earlier in the show, I told you that this leads to what? 3-4-5 triangle is on there. And a 3-4-5 triangle, and the Great Pyramid is on there. So, there are 3 pyramids at Giza. They're called Khufu, but we prefer to call it Pyramid number 1. That's the Great Pyramid. And don't forget, I am a great pyramid researcher. And, you know, I'm going to use that in my Jamie Janover said it. I am a great pyramid researcher. I'm going to use that. That's going to be my log line, Alejandro. Does it make a note of that? Alan Green, the great, pause, pyramid researcher. So, of the 3 pyramids, number 1, number 2, number 3. Number 1's called Khufu because Khufu built it. Of course he did in 20 years. Clever boy. 100,000 slaves did it. Then comes his son Khafre, and he built a one that he wanted it to be bigger, but it couldn't be, but he put it on a hill so that it would look bigger. And then Mankore, whoever that was, who knows? I mean, he did not have high aspirations at all because he thought, well, my dad, my granddad, you know, how can I beat that? I know, I'll have fluffy pillows outside my pyramid instead. Because you got to see those. They are not like anything else. They are something else. Like, and Jamie can talk to that. So the question is, which pyramid has a side slope that is exactly the 3, 4, 5 triangle? Go. The angle of a 3, 4, 5 triangle. Is it the Great Pyramid? Is it the second pyramid? Is it the third pyramid? First answer correct wins a book. So one of the dangerous things about what Jamie does, though, and I really mean this seriously, occasionally he has the power, he has such power that he can make the earth move under your feet.
And so Nassim is looking at this and saying the star tetrahedron forms a vector equilibrium in the middle. But then he realized this can't be it by itself because these red tetrahedrons on the outside don't have a complete equal and opposite. They're just open-faced on the outside. And he added 40 more tetrahedrons until he got to a total of 64 tetrahedrons. And this, you guys, is Nassim Haramein's theorized fabric of the vacuum of the universe. Because...
Oh my goodness.
Whoa. Okay. Orderly, guys.
Don't move. You stay right where you are. It's okay.
Wow.
Hi.
How'd you do that?
Jamie,
Come on. Do it again.
You guys, that wasn't me. This is what I'm saying. This is just how it is.
That was one of the crazier moments of all time for me, for sure.
Tell us what happened, Jamie.
Well, it was my first earthquake that I'd ever been in.
Ever created, you mean?
Well, no, I'll tell you a story. I was doing a presentation for a group that I don't think is around anymore called Project Butterfly in Los Angeles, California. So we're in downtown Los Angeles in a warehouse.
I got to interrupt. That does sound a little Los Angeles, doesn't it?
Yeah, there's about 50 people.
Project Butterfly? Come on.
This is like May of 2009, 11 years ago. And, you know, in those days, it would take me a full hour and 45 minutes to get to that slide of the 64 tetrahedron grid where it makes sense why I would say the 64 tetrahedron grid is the seed geometry of the fabric of the vacuum, because I go through a long explanation that leads up to it.
Can you give us the short version?
So I basically was giving an hour and 45 minute long punchline joke where it took me that long to be like, okay, finally, this is what I was talking about. This is the geometry of the universe. And then I'm like, hey, who's shaking my, oh my God, it's an earthquake. And I looked at the ceiling and this giant cinder block wall next to me. And I had the thought of like, if I get crushed and killed by this earthquake right now, so be it, because
it's still perfect.
It was just absolute confirmation. Because literally, if that earthquake hit 10 seconds earlier or 10 seconds later, it wouldn't have been nearly as dramatic as it hitting me going, this is the geometry of the fabric of the universe. Boom. And I was like, you see me, I'm just like, and then I was just like, and I said, I was like, you know, I didn't cause that earthquake. That's obviously some sort of resonance happening. And I don't think that I caused the earthquake. I think, though, that I somehow, subconsciously or my biophysics, entrained my talk to the impending earthquake. Because earthquakes,
know. You're trying to wriggle out of it.
Earthquakes have
no, time out. Who thinks Jamie caused the earthquake?
No.
Please comment. Who thinks he caused it?
Go away.
Personally, I think he did.
No. I understand the physics enough to know that I don't cause earthquakes. But however, like dogs bark right before the earthquake happens because they can feel it coming.
So you were talking about. I
subconsciously felt this thing coming up, and something back there was like, it would be way more funny if you took a long time to get to that slide because there's this thing coming. And then, I don't know. I have no idea how that happened, but it's on video. And then shortly thereafter, somebody's like, we got that on video. And you saw the screen went blank because I had my computer sitting on top of the projector that was up by the ceiling because we had to have a short cable to go from the computer, and I was using a remote control. So the lid of the computer was like this, and the earthquake was 4.6 or 4.7, pretty enough that it went, and it closed my computer. And so the video went off. Wow. And then after that, I said, you know, I'm going to say some stuff in a little while that would have sounded like completely out there, but now that this earthquake happened, the second I said this is the structure of the universe, you might actually take that in a different way. You know, to just cut to the chase, you know, the physics ends up talking about life in the universe. In other words, that we're not the only intelligent life in the universe. And that is a sensitive subject on its own. I mean, it wasn't very long ago that if you started talking like that, you got burnt at the stake. So, you know, if you're a physicist and you want to be taken seriously with your equations that are like field theory equations, a la like Hawking and Einstein, and then the next sentence later, you're talking about ships the size of planets and stuff like that, you know, you might have a hard time getting published. And sure enough, Nassim is very brave, and he'll say what he thinks is the truth, no matter how unpopular it is, including saying, you know, decades ago that he thought that maybe extraterrestrials visited our planet thousands of years ago. And so I started doing talks and saying that kind of stuff in public and getting reactions that were very interesting from certain people. And now when I talk like that, people are like, I've seen every episode of Ancient Aliens. You don't need to even explain all this stuff. Now it's like the most popular show on History Channel. But when I first started talking about this was not a popular idea to say, oh yeah, maybe there's some advanced technology that was brought down by the galactic family. And I mean, I don't even talk like this very much, like online, but now I think all bets are off now. Now that the Pentagon has been like, yeah, actually, you saw that in the New York Times recently, the contract was like, yeah, we have craft that aren't from this earth. Really? Craft that aren't from this earth? If that's true, then everything that you've ever known going all the way back needs to be re-looked at with that in mind, being like, oh, so that's not such a crazy idea then. Oh, so that actually, no wonder that's like that. Like, they're probably up there right now going, yeah, they're starting to figure it out. I feel like we're the most popular reality television show in the galaxy right now. What's on today, honey? Oh, it's still the 7 billion Stooges. They're still hitting each other over the head with 2x4s, honey? Yeah. My book says this and your book says that, so I'm going to hit you over the head with a 2x4. That's what we're still doing. And they're like, yeah, I think we're going to wait a little while before we start talking to those guys, because if they can't stop shooting at each other, they're definitely going to shoot at us when we come down. And we don't want to upset the habit trail, you know. I feel like, it's, in the same way I wouldn't land in a helicopter in the middle of the Amazon with the untouched tribes. They would be all like freaked out and then like look at me and be like, oh my God, it's God. And I'd be like, no, I'm not God. I have a helicopter. And they'd be like, what's that? You know? So, I mean, I feel like that's what's going on, really. They're up there right now listening to this Zoom.
Well, that's
every single thing that goes on all at the same time, no problem. And they're like, oh, cool, this is fun. Those guys are starting to talk about us more and more, honey.
Honey. So what is an extraterrestrial then? You know, I much prefer that term to alien.
Well, we're the aliens, first of all, because they were here first.
Okay. So, but in any case, just as an overall concept, you know, I get people asking me, who do you think Shakespeare really was? And of course, it's a fiery topic. It's got the same resistance in Shakespeare land, in English literature land, that Nassim experiences in physics land, that you experience in all that you run up against in trying to say, oh, science and spirituality is all the same thing, man. You know, it seems that we do love a fight, don't we? We just love a good fight. It's let's have.
Only when you know you have the truth on your side. I'm not fighting for the sake of it.
I mean, the whole planet just loves to fight. You know, I grew up in Manchester, England, and we had to hate somebody, so we would hate the people from Liverpool. And it plays out in football. You know, Manchester United against Liverpool. They will kill each other. You know, not the hooligans. You know, just I'm going to school. 15 years old, 16 years old. I like the Beatles. You like the Rolling Stones. Right, we have to walk on opposite sides of the street. You know, we're the Stones fans, we're the Beatles fans. You can't belong to both. If you've got jokes in, you know, I came to America, it was, Polish jokes. In England, it's Irish jokes. I'm sure in Ireland, it's English jokes. You've just got to make fun of the other, because for whatever reason, I don't know, we just don't want to get to this, to kumbaya. You know, we don't want it. So what's going on?
I think people got confused a long time ago, and then they taught their kids the same thing. And we've been teaching confused things for generations and generations. So everybody was taught the same confused wrong things. And now we're starting to realize a bunch of that stuff was wrong. And so it's our jobs, all of us, to spread the correct, resonant, truthful information, no matter what that information is, even if it's unpopular information. Because that's what's going to get us through the evolution process that we need to go through faster than we're doing it now, hopefully, so that we can really save the day, literally save the day, save the earth from...
Well, that is the call to action for us right now. I mean, I'm going to keep harping on coming back to that. All of you watching, listening, all of you who have put on 200 more comments. Oh, by the way, Alejandro, do we have a winner yet? Anybody know which pyramid is the 3, 4, 5 triangle?
Yes, we have one. He only just replied though second. His name is
Drew Sipe.
There you go.
Drew Sipe, wherever you are, your picture on, is this Facebook, is you or somebody on a camel. Very nice. So Drew Sipe is our winner, but I would like a little more information. You say it's the second pyramid. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's good enough because it is the second pyramid, but the name of that's common. Yeah, it's all right. I'm going to just go with second pyramid anyway, because I don't like to call it Khafre, because it ain't Khafre. Anyway, let's be honest. It's not Khufu, it's not Khafre, it's not Menkori. You know, those guys just stumbled on those pyramids at one time and went, whoa, look what we found. This will be good. Let's try and do that. And they built other pyramids that when you're there, you realize, oh my God, you know, they can't build, they can't do anything even close to this. So Drew Sipe, send us your info. Write to me at Alan, ALAN, at to be or not to be .org. It's not a Prince song. It's not the number 2 and the letter B. It's the way he wrote it in words. To be or not to be.org. Write to me, send me your physical location, and we shall send a pigeon over with that book immediately. Congratulations. So that, the thing, just to harp on about that a little bit, why did they build these pyramids with specific mathematical correlations? Why would you do that? Why would you build this freaking huge thing that you saw Jamie go, I'm standing here between the Great Pyramid and the second Great Pyramid, second greatest pyramid, and why? It really is incomprehensible, the effort, isn't it? Let's just think about that a little bit. Forget that I'm only even on this journey because of this guy who's telling me, oh, look at the pyramid. You know, I wouldn't know a thing about it if he hadn't said, check it out. Why would you build a monument that huge? The effort, the stones, I mean, we all talk about it, the size, the scope of it, the fact that to put that many, like, talk about the Great Pyramid now. The Great Pyramid has an angle of 51.843 degrees as its side slope angle. The second one, Khafre, that's the one with 53.13, which is the perfect 345. So you imagine you cut the pyramid down the middle, slice it down in half, you've got 2 345 triangles. It's not the actual angle of the face sloping over, but it's as though you cut it through the middle. Why would you do that? And why would you say? One of the convincing things to me is the Egyptians like to put hieroglyphs on everything, right? Everything in sight in Egypt is plastered with hieroglyphs from another era, the dynasties. But these pyramids on Giza, which used to be known as Rose Tau, and there's another clue for you all. The walrus was Paul. It was called Rose Tau Cross, Rosy Cross, Rosicrucians. Oh my! Oh, what you mean? That was the name of Giza in ancient prehistory. Rose Tau. Oh, okay. But why would you do that in any case, and not put a? If I were Khufu, and if I, just wanted to build the biggest monument on Earth, and I didn't care what it cost, I said, I don't care what it costs. Just get 100,000 slaves, just whip them into shape. I build it and hurry up because I can't live forever, but I want that to be my tomb. Modest little thing. Wouldn't you put a freaking neon sign on it saying Khufu? Wouldn't you put something on saying, look, my tomb, I built this. Well, I had my people build it. Let my people go. No, they've got to stay and build. So wouldn't you do that? But no, there's nothing there. It is standing there. It is just sitting there saying, look at me. I'm speaking to you. I'm speaking to you in the only language that you when it all boils down to it, what is there? Is nothing but my shape. It's just the shape, and the most elementary shape. And Nassim can talk to this. And one of the first things that Nassim asked me to do was I had gone kind of a bit overboard on that video. Says, well, Alan found the same 12 constants in the Great Pyramid that were in the Shakespeare sonnet. And that's true at first, but then I kept looking deeper and deeper and deeper into just taking the basic proportions and say, let's divide the corner slope and a half base by this base and a diagonal, say, you know, I mean, only touching the basics, not cherry picking any numbers at all. And you find that basically, so far I've cataloged 85 constants, most important constants in mathematics, and they're all there. So that doesn't mean that whoever built it said, oh, let's put all 85 constants in there. They just, it just means they said, what's the perfect shape that inherently has all of the most important math stuff in it? Because once you've got pi and phi and Euler number, you've basically got it. I mean, that is on the cover of the sonnets. Literally, there's a shape within the geometry that I haven't gone into because it's just I get trolled just for saying there are some right angle triangles on there. Not that I care about that anymore. I used to care. I used to write to the trolls. Do you write to the trolls? I used to write to them saying, oh, let me explain. No, it's not like that. It's this. And then I'd get something that I cannot say online, so just utter vitriolic, putrid abuse imaginable. What's it feel like to have wasted 16 years of your life, you stupid? I mean, it's just, what? Can't we be friends? No, apparently we can't. But my point about all this is, you end up with this ultimate question: why would you do that? Why would you make it last? Why would you build it to last? Why would you build it to be earthquake proof? Why would you do all of that and then reiterate it? Over to you, Jamie. Where else on the face of the earth do you see these same mathematical symbols in stone?
I mean, it's
Name a couple.
almost everywhere. There's so many sites. There's so many ancient sites that have similar encoding of geometry. It's, that's why we went on all these expeditions with Resident Science Foundation to various ancient sites, locations around the world. Alan, I was lucky enough to get to go to Peru and India.
Where we met, yeah.
And Egypt with you in a year and a month, or a year and a couple of months time.
Yeah.
And those pillowy rocks on the Menkaure Pyramid are just more or less identical to the pillowy rocks in Cusco and other places in Peru. And it goes on and on. I mean, the parallels are very deep, and it's very detailed and involved, because it starts to connect the dots amongst the sites all around the world, the global grid of sites, matching ley lines and geometries like dodecahedral geometry inside the earth. A lot of the points of the dodecahedron land on sacred sites. Yeah, and from Stonehenge to Unaguni pyramids under the water off the southern coast of Japan. I mean, it's just like everywhere ancient civilizations were doing this encoding of information. And it's not a coincidence, right, that all of them were doing a similar thing. There was communication happening. The whole story of our civilization and the origins of humanity that we got in school, certainly anything older than a decade ago, all those stories out of Africa hypothesis that humanity started in Africa and then we migrated and went over the land bridge and all this, so much more complicated than that. The DNA genetic record that we've been able to piece together shows a much more complex system than we ever thought. Same thing with the brain, same thing with the quantum wormhole network. It's way more complicated, way more detailed than we thought. It's not right brain, left brain, and all these simplifications of stuff. It's nice to talk about it in that way to simplify, but the complexity is astounding. And the more we learn, the more we realize we don't know. And so it's good to go about the process with that knowledge of just being open to anything wherever the data leads you. And that's what is great about what Alan has done, is he's gone down those rabbit holes. Instead of questioning and saying this can't be, he's like, well, wait, maybe there is something there. And then he found it. And he's like, yeah, there is something. And look, it's like this, and it's like this, and like this. And when you line it all up, if you knew what I know from listening to Alan for a really long time, listening to Robert Edward Grant for a really long time, and listening to Nassim Haramein for a really long time, I can't explain all of it yet. But the common threads that they're pulling on from completely different worlds, pointing to the same direction and to the same set of information, is incredibly powerful and has crazy ramifications on everything from, you know, more spiritual, esoteric, consciousness-related things to ancient history, ancient civilizations, and modern technology and physics and where we're going and what we're going to do and how we're going to interact with the rest of the universe. I mean, the conservative estimate is that there's 40 billion Earth-like planets in the Milky Way galaxy, and that there might be 1 trillion galaxies. So the chance we're the only intelligent life is 0. And people need to start adjusting their worldview to that.
Well, that's the question that everybody finally
It's
asks.
hard to wrap your brain around it.
What is okay, this is all very interesting. So we could talk on and on and on and on and on about it. And I'd like to at least throw it open to, are there any questions that anybody has for Jamie or for myself that we can answer right now? That would be great. But I want, whilst we're looking at those, look, the question that most commonly gets asked that I experience is, well, all this is very interesting, but what does it mean to me? Everyone comes back to that. You know, what does that mean? What does knowledge of this do to my life? Why is it important that I know this? Is it important to know who Shakespeare was, or just let it be that there was a mystery? And I used to answer that with, well, yeah, truth matters, you know. I want to put the crown on the right head. I'd like to know who it was. But I've since, you know, morphed a lot through these 16 years to recognize that, well, first of all, look, I mean, look at the toll it takes on you. This is me at the start of it, and I'm just a shadow of my former self. I've got to change that picture. I've got to find something a bit more up to date.
You missed it. No. I don't think the share screen worked.
Oh, it didn't? Oh, it should. If I turn off my thing, aren't you seeing me? Anyway, well, it doesn't matter.
I'm now solo. There you go.
Okay, so, but that question is, what does it mean to me? Why is it important? How does it change my life right now? I've got the rent to pay. I've got COVID breathing down my back. I've got this happening and that happening. Why is this important? Can you sum up for us that while I look at some of these questions that people are asking, please, Jamie?
Summing up why it's important to know stuff.
Yeah, I gave you a softball question there.
I'll give you the 1-minute version answer, which is,
thanks.
If all the information in the universe is holographically encoded into every point, that means all the information of the entire universe is inside you right now. And that's why all the Ascended Masters were all trying to tell us, point all your attention into the center of your existence, the stillness in the center of your heart, right? The truth is within. Look within. The kingdom of heaven is within. All these different ways of looking at it. You know, to the still point in your heart chakra, right? Like the Kundalini vortex, like a black hole curling space-time to stillness. And then there's an equal and opposite. So in other words, you've got a field that's spinning, and you meditate and you visualize the dual torus, and it all becomes clear. That's why.
So I'd like all of you to do that right now, and let's focus our energy into our hearts. Now, I mean, yes, one can talk endlessly on it, and one can sum it up with just really that. There's a lot of stuff, and it's all connected.
Yeah.
but more important, it's all connected where? In you.
That's right.
There is nothing but you. I believe that with my whole, utter, complete, whole being, because all the great masters, all the great ones have said it since time immemorial. It's always the same message. Kingdom of God is in you. These things I do, ye also shall do, and greater than these. I mean, we're all gods. Get used to it. You are the whole shebang. And if we knew that, we would absolutely know that there is no scarcity, there is no want. But I know that's a terribly awkward thing to say to anyone who is in pain and feeling scarcity. So I don't want to preach, but honestly think about the fact that at least you can do something. I would like my call of action to all of you right now, before I look at these questions, is just a reminder again. If we were fortunate enough to have the Dalai Lama sitting with us right now, he'd say exactly what he said to Jamie and me and Nassim and Robert and others. And he says it all the time, doesn't he? I mean, imagine a person who's gone through a country has utterly tried to wipe you and your people off the face of the planet, and he does nothing but go around the world saying, I pray for Chinese, I pray for Tibet, I pray for everybody. I mean, he said to me personally, right at me, he said, I see you, I do not see white face, brown face, yellow face. I don't see man, woman. I see other human being, one of 7 billion human beings on planet, just like me, all same. We must have more empathy, more respect for each other. So questions. I have a question. In your, this is from Christina Tiot. In your opinion, do the pyramids in Visoko, Sarajevo, tie in with the Egyptian pyramids? I haven't done a lot of research on that. Maybe Jamie knows about that. I've seen that guy's video on the Sarajevo pyramids, and clearly, yeah, but I can't speak intelligently on it. I'll pass that one to Jamie. In your opinion, are they connected?
Are you talking about the Bosnian pyramid?
I think she's talking about the Bosnian. She says Visoko, Sarajevo.
Yeah, Visoko, yeah. That's the town. Well, I have an interesting story to tell you then, actually, because fortunate for me, I got to do a gig where Nassim and I co-presented on a small cruise ship off the coast of Croatia in October of 2016. And at the end of that cruise, there was about 35 of us, I think, and we all got onto a bus, drove Croatia into Bosnia, and went to go see Dr. Sam Asmanagic, who is the researcher who says that he found the oldest, biggest pyramid ever made on Earth. And so, picture us climbing up onto the side of the Bosnian pyramid. And I'm standing there with Nassim Haramein, listening to Dr. Sam talk all about the theory and everything. And he was showing us geological evidence of conglomerate rock that was at a sloped angle, some of which looked like it may have chunked off and had sort of right angle-ish corners to it. And then there was a lot of stuff that was all broken up, and then there were a lot of trees, and they had to clear a lot of forest just to get to these rocks. And then people started asking questions, and we listened to all the answers. There's a lot of information. And to cut to the chase, in the end, the Bosnian pyramid is a mountain, okay? It was not a pyramid that got built. There was nothing there. And then they started placing rocks and building a pyramid like the Great Pyramid of Giza. Maybe they took a mountain that looked pyramidal like many of the other mountains in that mountainous region in Bosnia, and they terraformed it slightly. But I was not convinced that it is actually a made from scratch pyramid. And I can tell you Nassim was not totally convinced either. And that at the very least, what we both say is that there would need to be quite a bit more research done to back up the claim that it is a man-made object.
Okay.
The face that you see all the time is the north face, and it faces very much due north, and it's very oriented towards north. Could be a coincidence, just like anything could be a coincidence. There are a bunch of other things that seem beyond coincidence. So I'm not saying that there wasn't ancient civilizations that did some sort of terraforming or other work in the area. But if you look at the geology in the area, you can tell that that's a mountain. And we couldn't go see the corners. We wanted to go see the edge, like because that's where you'd really know. Like, let's go look at the corner of the pyramid. Is there a straight angle to that? Like when you go to the bent pyramid and you look up at the razor edge of that thing, it's so precise. There's nothing like that in Bosnia. So love Dr. Samir, really sweet guy. He was a great host. Got to hang out, have some meals with him. He did fantastic presentation on pyramids around the world. Very knowledgeable guy. Made some incredible sculpture gardens near these tunnels that go underneath the mountains. They're not directly underneath the pyramid, but there are a whole bunch of tunnels that look like they were purposely backfilled or water deposited into these tunnels because the sediment goes all the way to the top, to the ceiling. There's not even an inch of gap of settling of that sediment. So that's fascinating. We saw a lot of very interesting stuff there. Encourage you to go check it out. But long story short, I am not convinced that that is the oldest, largest pyramid. And I don't believe that there's a direct connection that I know of between Giza and that pyramid, other than the fact that there's pyramids all around the world. And maybe they terraformed it to have a pyramid-like quality because, it's a long story, but the shape of the pyramid is related to the shape of space-time because it's half of an octahedron, which is the resonating cavities formed by a tetrahedral grid, which is the theorized geometry of the fabric of space-time.
So Christina, I hope that answered your question. Got quite a detailed response. Pamela Lee Richards. Hi, Pamela.
Hey, Pamela.
Question, did His Holiness discuss his interactions with extraterrestrials and where did he meet them? So the second part sort of presupposes that he that he did, and where did he meet them? No, he didn't discuss extraterrestrials with us, unless I blanked out at that part, Jamie?
No, I don't think we got it.
No. Celtic Angel Mist. Celtic Angel Mist. Does that sound like anyone we know? I'm trying to suspect who these handles are for. Anyway, Celtic. Is it possible that before the cataclysm, that many highly evolved beings had the means to leave? I'd say yes. Jamie says a maybe, I think.
Yeah, I would say yes. And I would say to answer also a related question of why would you go through all the trouble? It's so much work to make the Great Pyramid. It's a lot of work if you're dealing with physics as we know today. In other words, if you don't have gravity control, then those rocks are heavy and you have to pull them over the sand, and that's a pain in the neck. Unless you have some crazy technology that we don't know about, that we haven't figured out yet ourselves, and that job was super easy. And you could be like, yeah, let's just make a room that's in the middle, and we'll make it out of 100-ton granite boulders that are perfectly fit together, where you can't even put a piece of paper between them. And it'll be easy. It'll be so easy. We'll just make it exactly like we want. It doesn't matter how it's arranged. We'll have hidden passages, and they'll all be perfect angles. Everything's perfect. No problem. Because we have this technology. And what that is, we don't know. But I would guess it had something to do with controlling gravity or the gravitational field.
Yeah, I'm not sure you understood the question. She asked, is it possible that before the cataclysm, many highly evolved beings had the means to leave?
Yeah, they had the means to leave because they had gravity control. And they were like, leaving's easy. The only reason we can't
if they
leave...
built these monuments, then they obviously had higher technology, and therefore they had the ability to just...
It's not easy for us to leave right now.
Let's get out of Dodge. It's not going to be fun. Yeah.
Yeah, we have to build this giant tube, a phallus basically, with a bunch of fuel, and then light the bottom like a bottle rocket, and then run away and hope it doesn't explode as these volunteers, as Nassim says, sits on the top of this thing, fingers crossed that they make it out of our gravitational field. And then once they do, then they have to get back in. And that doesn't go well sometimes either. And so it's pretty risky business leaving until, again, you have control over gravity. Then you can make a bubble around your ship where you, the ship, everything in that bubble is isolated from the field of gravity outside that bubble, and you can go really fast and then move at a 90-degree angle and move at a 90-degree angle, and you don't feel any forces inside that bubble, which is probably how and why the Navy is taking pictures of these little things. They go, and then a Navy pilot goes, yeah, it accelerated to out of sight within 2 seconds. Yeah, if you did that in our plane, you would be smushed against the back of the plane and be dead. Like, we don't have that technology. Unless, this is the other theory, all that technology is black budget and it's being done by, you know, military. And some of that technology is so far beyond what I think that even the military would be capable of. And the ship's so large. And then there's evidence of seeing ships that are really, really big. And that's not our military building ships on some other planet. So,
yeah.
I mean, this topic, endless rabbit hole. You can't even.
All right, we've got a question from Bop. Hey, Bop. Hey, Bop or Rebop. I know Bop. Bob Emerson. We met a long time ago when my daughter was just pregnant, wasn't she? Anyway, do you think the Queen has low-key stepped down? Hasn't been to Buckingham Palace for 6 months. I didn't know that. She never writes. I mean, I don't, you know, she doesn't keep up with it. And that this could be a realistic opportunity to open the altar. Well, has the Queen stepped down? Yeah, I don't know whether she's been to the Buckingham Palace and whether that's a realistic thing. I mean, obviously, Prince Charles is the longest waiting king in waiting in history. He's my age. We were born about 6 weeks apart, I think. So he's 72, and he's probably pretty pissed off about how long this has taken. You know, he expected to be king a long time ago, but these blue-blooded royals, you know, they got something going. I don't know what it is, but longevity. Queen Elizabeth I had everyone fooled that way. She ruled for 45 years. QE2 has done it for longer. Look, the question surrounds the lineage. I've got videos about this online. If you want to go deeper into it, look up specifically the CPAC 2019 video, which is on Bardcode. And so I can't have an opinion saying whether or not she's stepping down. I would not know. I mean, I think it's likely that they must know the true story, right? They must know that they come from this completely broken lineage, from the Jacobeans to the Saxe-Coburg Gothers. Oh, let's change our name to Windsors because Nazis is not going to go over very well in Britain after what we've just been through and all of that. Now, I mean, so I'm neither pro or anti-monarchy. What would be the point in that? It's just, hey, it's just the drama that we all play. All the world's a stage and all the men and women are merely players. We have our exits and our entrances, right? I mean, it's a game. It's a wonderful game, and we will all eventually, one day, sit in a big circle, laugh our asses off and say, wow, wasn't that fun? Let's do it again. And I mean all of us. So it is a big circle. And yet, somehow, very tiny. So the game part of it is one aspect. You can take it very seriously and get locked into, whoa, the lineage and the, yeah, I mean, it's all fascinating. And there's no doubt about it that if Henry Roseley was the son of the Queen by Edward de Vere or whoever, it's a very fascinating thing because he was kept in the tower whilst they officiated over the changeover. Tudor dynasty is over. Let's bring James onto the throne, and then James is on. And then the moment James is named the successor to the throne, don't know which is the right term really. You use interchangeably. His first official duty as king, before he even rides down from Edinburgh to London to be crowned, is he releases Roseley from the tower. So some deal was made where Roseley gave up his claim to be on the throne in exchange for his freedom. That's a long story. I can't go into it in great depth here, but I do a little bit on the CPAC video, and there will be much more coming on that. Perhaps we'll have a special show just about that. But as for, is she deliberately stepping out of the way for what? The question then would be, does Charles become king, or does it go straight to William? I kind of think I think it probably needs to go to William. Not many people in England really have great love for Charles. They don't like there's a lot of people who don't like him, which is probably unfair. I thought he was always a pretty funny guy. He was into a lot of Monty Pythonish humor. But then I would be too if I was a royal. Geez, that'd be the only way to get through it, wouldn't it? You'd have to be, oh, this is madness. Why did I deserve this? What? People are starving and I eat my Wheaties off a gold plate every morning. I don't get it. So anyway, I don't have a sensible answer for that except to say I really don't know, Bob, but it's a fascinating question. We will find out when Elizabeth eventually decides to go, if she does. Maybe she's immortal. Lalana. Hey, Lalana's on. Lalana Rose, question. Do you think, oh, literally the computer went off at the moment I started to try to read it. And it's a PC, and I know nothing about PCs. It just disappeared.
1 second.
Ah, this is Alejandro, by the way. Just pop your head in.
Everyone here behind the scenes.
I hope he gets it fixed, else he's out of a job next week. This is still, I can't take much more of this, honestly. I mean, you can't get good help these days. It's just.
Hey, about that race. Were you saying something?
He's got it. Lalana, our dear friend Lalana. Nice to hear from you, love. She says, do you think grace is involved with all this? And if so, what's your definition of grace? Wow. What a deep question. We have some deep listeners and viewers here. Wait till our program gets really popular. Not many people know about it yet. Do I think grace is involved with all of this? Yeah. I think we have almost nothing to depend on but grace. If and how do you define that? But grace being this, going back to that bodhisattva role, you know. If there's a God, yes, there is. And if it's you, yes, it is. And if you disagree with me even, tough. If there's only one, all the scriptures say so, would you deliberately just hurt yourself? No. Would you love yourself, or would you would you just say, gee, I can't stand myself today. It's a tough job being God. Nothing to do but sit around in bliss and watch the rest of me screw it all up. No, I mean, there's nothing but look, this was the rant that I was going on Giza with Jamie following me around filming, and I wish you could see it, but I'm not going to show it to you because it's too embarrassing, because I'm just going on and on and on, and Jamie perfectly, I'm going on about infinity, right? I'll give you the cliff notes. I'm saying it's mathematically, imagine infinity. I said the trouble with numbers is there's always one more, which is true. That's the trouble with numbers. There's always a next one. That's the trouble with primes. There's always a next one. That's the trouble with time. There's always more of it, right? That's the truth. But even clearer in mathematics, you can't prove that there's always more time. Okay, get it. But you can certainly prove there's always one more number. Just add one. It's a system that is built to be infinite, and yet science doesn't like infinite. As soon as you put infinity into the equations, it all collapses, because what does it prove? It proves that no matter if you do 10 to the 53 or 10 to the 80 or 10 to the 1,000 or 10 to the millionth or 10 to the, there's always another. It never stops. And you can go down, 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 10 to the minus 53, 10 to the minus 83, 10 to the... where does that stop? Until you get to this idea of infinity. And the shocking thing to me is that that's creation. You know, we are told, we know it's the truth, but it's very hard for the human mind to wrap our head around it. Krishna says to Arjuna, there never was a time that you did not exist. Never is there a time that you will not exist. The soul lives forever. Nothing ever dies. And that's, you know, we can understand that, I think, going this way, linearly forward. I can understand that from a perspective of, oh, it never ends, because you think, oh, well, you get to this point, is it just end? No, the mind can easily grasp, well, what's next? In fact, it's impossible to think of just switch off, gone, nothing exists anymore. But think backwards, that can drive you mad. There never was a beginning. That, to me, is one of the most stunning thoughts. So I was going on and on and on and on and on about this. And Jamie very wisely started to pull back. And he's walking away from me. And I'm sitting on the Mancori pillow pyramids going blah, 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 blah. And I'm ranting. And my voice is getting fainter and fainter and fainter. And Jamie's walking back and back and back, and does a 360, and he comes around, and I'm still talking, and then he comes back up to me again. And of course I milked it for a bit, for all it was worth, because I saw him going away, and when he comes back, I'm still saying the same thing. I'm going, and then there's another eternity and another eternity. So mathematics actually proves the divine, because you can't, that no matter how big a number it is still nothing. No matter how big you get, it is still, in ratio to its possibility, it's still the tiniest little nothing. And if you extrapolate that to us all, what we have been in lifetimes, because all the great ones say, well, we've had 8 million lifetimes before we even reach human, you know, as stick insects and stones and flowers and blah, 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 you know. But then that's just in what about the previous universe and the previous? We have all been everything. It's mathematically impossible that we haven't been. If there is an eternity going backwards, and that's the truth. There never was a beginning. If there never was a beginning, then no matter how far back into the so-called beginning you get, there's another infinity, another eternity there that you have done everything in. It's impossible that you haven't. So when we all do these regressions, you know, who says, oh, I had a regression the other week, or this psychic, she was really great. I found out I was a plumber in Syria. No one ever says that. I mean, this year alone, I've met 3 Joan of Arcs, 7 Shakespeares, 9 Da Vinci's, and a partridge in a pear tree. We all want we want to be important, right? because we know we are it. So actually, who's to say we haven't been all of that in alternate universes? So it ends up being a thing that you can't get the answer. But to answer your question, is grace involved? In other words, if you have done everything, and you have, therefore we would be defeated from the start when we incarnate if we knew all that. We have the veil pulled over us, we can't remember. Because if you knew from the beginning, I was the worst murderer, I was the worst person imaginable on the face of the earth. I was also a saint. I led my people to freedom. I killed all my people. I mean, we've done everything. And you'd be beaten from the start if you knew that. And you had detailed, you go, oh my God, I don't want to go through this again. So grace comes in the form of, I forgive you, my son, my daughter. Don't worry about it. Forget it. Try again. Let's do it again. That to me is grace. That's the ultimate meaning of it. It is a divine consciousness that is behind all this, that knows the whole story and says, what does it matter? We're having a play. We will end it at some point. We have a day of Brahma, a night of Brahma. We will all sit around. We'll all get drunk. We'll all party. We'll have a massive pizza. We'll do Burning Man out in the cosmos. We'll be everything we already are. So there you go. I'm ranting. That was my answer to it. Do you have a better answer to that, as Jamie, as does grace have anything to do with it?
Definitely not.
Okay. So one last question from Grant David. Alan and Jamie, have you heard of Vortex math as created by Rodin and Powell? This is a system of, I have a feeling Jamie might have the answer to this. This is a system of math that stems from ancient gematria. Multi-digit numbers are added to reduce them to a single digit. Oh, we might know a thing or two about that. Digital root. The core configuration of numbers mirrors the square and compass of the Masonic symbol. Has this been considered? We need Robert Edward Grant here. Has it been considered? Has this been considered as to how it might relate to the Shakespeare uncoded revelations? Vortex math is promising to possibly revolutionize math and physics. The basic configuration expands into 3D to form a torus, which when replicated with wires is flowing electricity and magnetism in radical new ways. So that's the question. Have you heard of it? Does it have anything to do with possibly Shakespeare uncoded revelations?
Well, I can let you speak to Shakespeare, but root math, if you guys aren't familiar, 14 would actually be 5 because you add 1 and 4 together. And so no matter how long the number is, you add all the digits together and then you add them together and you add them together until you get to 1 digit. That's the digital root.
Talal Ghanam is another member of our group who I should have mentioned previously.
Yep, that's
Just
right.
to give him a plug, he wrote the book on this. He's the expert on it, digital root mathematics.
Yeah, check out Talal Ghanam, and also he's written a bunch of papers with Robert Edward Grant. So I would go to robertedwardgrant.com and check out the publications tab and look at all those papers, because this questioner obviously is very familiar, and there's probably a new perspective to be gained on root math. And I'd also check out Roman Light, he goes by. He's also gone deep into this Vortex math. He once explained it in great detail to me and found an error in the multiplication tables of Rodin's math that, when corrected, changed the mapping of the digital root from having that W shape. I'm sure you've seen, if you're familiar with Rodin math, a circle with a W looking shape with lines connecting. That always struck me as a slightly strange, because the universe is not doing asymmetrical stuff like that. And when you correct the error in the division table, then it all becomes star tetrahedron, and it's 369, 369, fractal, going smaller and smaller and getting bigger and bigger, matching Nassim Haramein's theory. So Rodin is super onto it, and has a very important piece of the puzzle that he brought forth in the Vortex math. And he informed a bunch of other folks, including Nassim, including Dan Winter, and other great researchers. I've had fortunate to get to hang out and talk with Dan Winter as well. He's another very fascinating character with a lot of information. And it all ties together, and it's all complementary. And so the answer is yes. But as in terms of root math and Vortex math matching what, the Enochian tables and the sonnets, I let Alan speak to that. I can't speak to that.
Yeah. I must admit that I. Oh yeah, no, you're absolutely right. The Enochian tables is a touchstone that goes deep, deep, deep. And for those of you who don't know what that is, and for those of you who did not win this book, that's the Enochian tables, channeled by angels to John Dee in Krakow, Poland in 1584 on June 24th, 624. It has 624 windows in it, full of both Enochian letters and then Latin alphabet letters that Dee had to learn the Enochian language, which is supposedly the original language of Adam and Eve. So, channel to him on 624, 624 characters in it. My work on the Shakespeare touchstones is gravestone, monument, and sonnets dedication. Adds up to 624 characters. The 624 characters in that, you flow them in direct correspondence to the letters in the Enochian tables. And if you know the key, which is double T, TT, wherever there's a double T, it's pointing to another letters in the Enochian tables, and it gives you a message. But then in brilliant way that only the angels can really choreograph, the Enochian tables itself has the key going back, and it has double T's, the same number of double T's pointing back to the what it ends up being the ciphertext and plain text in this. And so it ends up being this thing that folds back on itself, and then you actually turn it through 180 degrees and move it. It's the most stunning, brilliant thing. So yes, it has all the elements of mathematical, brilliant cryptography hidden within it, and gematria, which is really got to be the subject for another call, because I want to get into that fairly deeply. So we've been going for 3 hours, and I think I'm going to wrap it up at this point with just mention a couple of things to everyone.
Before you do that, Alan, everybody go watch Alan's presentation on what he was just talking about, because he just kind of glossed over that, and it's so deep when he talks about it flipping on itself. It's undeniable. So seek that out on his Bardcast or his Bardcode YouTube channel.
Thank you, Jamie. Yeah, it's somewhere on there. I've lost track. Alejandro knows. So
we'll post some links when this is done.
Yeah, the thing that I want to encourage you all is think about the call to action from this conversation today, because that's the most important thing. You know, whether or not we actually end up with final conclusive proof of who Shakespeare is, it's more important that we think what Shakespeare was. What kind of mind could really wrap itself around this construction that has been created by the writer or writers and John Dee together as a group, deciding to incarnate together to deliver an eternal truth that is not just poetically beautiful, but is telling you the essence of dynamic mathematics that was known anciently, and that from which were built the pyramids, and from which the pyramids are telling us of the mathematics which is inherent in them, that is pointing us forward to Nassim Haramein's work, who never in a million years could I envision that I would be in his office and say, oh, I found this number in the sonnets, it might be important. And he goes, yeah, that's the number we've been looking for. You know, I mean, what? So who's writing this? I mean, it's mad. The other thing, so I want you to think of where that's all leading to, because the most important aspect of this is the planet is hurting. Really is hurting from this false myth of want and need and scarcity. There's no scarcity of power, there's no scarcity of energy, there's no scarcity of water, there's no scarcity therefore of what we call currency, really, if it's just an exchange for whatever we can extract from the natural resources of, you know, it's up to us. It really is up to us to move, and to move with consciousness and with grace, but quickly. I think there's some urgency, because we wouldn't have been told so, so clearly that by His Holiness. So let's get this convergence thing going. All it takes is for us to decide to do it. We need your help too. I mean, it's not just Jamie here. And next 2 weeks from now, Robert Edward Grant is my guest. 4 weeks from now, the great Adam Apollo is my guest. 6 weeks from then, we don't know. We might be doing it every week by then, because I want to ultimately be doing it every week, or certainly every week. Because we've got to get the information out, and I want you to be exposed to as many brilliant minds like Jamie and the other people that I've mentioned, who, we're all, first of all, there's only one. We just decided to be in different bodies so we could have a game, but we are all the same being. trying to remember who we are, trying to remember the grace that is this magnificent, incomprehensibly brilliant fractal temple that we live in, that is infinite that way and infinite that way and infinite back in time and infinite forward in time, and just the most amazing thing. We are a living miracle, right? But it's really up to you. We need your help, because you too are, all of you. It's Jamie says this on one of his videos. Perhaps you can just sum it up, Jamie. Just say, what's the difference? I mean, you're it. You are it. How do you say it? I saw you say it for about 30 seconds last night in one of the things I checked you out on you. If you can't think of it right now, I must have been hallucinating.
What am I? Remind me what I'm trying to remember.
Well, it was someone asked you the question about. I think it was that same question of center of universe. I think you sort of answered it within that. Just the central idea that we are it, but it's not just the Einsteins and the Nassim Harameins and the Mozarts and the Shakespeares. We're all the same being trying to remember who we are. And so my appeal to you is, all of you, please spread the word on this. If you enjoyed it, let other people know about it, and encourage as many people as you can to join this club. I get emails all the time from people who say, love your work, I saw that, blah, blah, blah. Oh, I think I might have found something. It's this, it's in whatever it might be in, right? Now, I don't have time to go down every rabbit hole that gets sent, because I know, I look at some of them, I go, wow, she's right, that's, woo, but that's her thing, or that's your thing. If you found it, you should go after it, but I would like at least to offer a platform for that. So we're going to be introducing on the new website, tobeornottobe.org, we're going to be introducing a new section soon that allows exposure for all the things that you have found that I cannot keep up with. None of us can keep up with it all, but you send us something, someone will look through it and see, does it look like it's real? Great, we'll post it, we'll put it on. So the whole section based on your ideas that may end up being the next thing like this, that's just, oh, look, I found this in Dante's Inferno, or whatever it is, because the whole world around us is a code. It's all a code. It's all, I mean, what else can it be if it's nothing but spinning whatever is down there, quarks? And if there's only ultimately down there, there's just one thing that's put together in different combinations to make it look like hydrogen, helium, lithium, beryllium, boron, carbon, nitrogen, oxygen, fluorine, neon, sodium, magnesium, aluminum, silicon, phosphorus, or whatever, make it look like that because it's got different electrons. But it's not, it's really the same thing. It's not the same truth that we're talking about. Oh, there's only really one of us. It's just the one. So you're perfectly, you have our permission. Go and be brilliant, because we all are. You are. And the world will try to tell you you're not. So please spread the word on this. There will be an area for you. I don't know what we're going to call it yet. We're going to call it the Hamlet Club, I think, or something like that, where the person who's come up with the greatest idea will feature it. New findings all the time. I just made a new friend this week. Shout out to Ryan7 in England, a fellow Mancunian, I think, from his accent. Great lad, young guy, full of passion, full of energy. He has a thing called The Secret Science. I'm definitely going to have him on this show at the earliest opportunity. Check his stuff out. I mean, it's everywhere, but honestly, he sent me something saying, I didn't know if he was joking. He said, have you ever come across the numbers 624 and 426? I think I've found something important. And I went, what? Like, what? Are you, what? And I still, I said, you and I have got to talk, but I'm busy now preparing for the next podcast. So Ryan, if you're out there, looking forward to chatting with you tomorrow, mate. Fellow Manchester lad. We're all brilliant. We're all over the place. We're all doing the same work. We're all doing the same stuff. We're all tilling the same fields. And it's got to be towards an ultimate purpose that is good for all of us, because, hey, there's only us and we love each other, don't we? Sure we do. Of course we do. Deep down. We do. There's nowhere else to go. we are it. So congratulations to, what was his name again?
Drew Sipe.
Drew Sipe or Seep. Book coming your way. We'll try and do this every time. I'm up for doing it every time, or maybe sometimes we'll give away a T-shirt. We're going to be launching a store so that we can make money. Yes, that's what this is really about. Let's make as much money as we possibly can from the merchandise. Just had to throw that in as a little laugh and a joke, because no, we want to spread the word, but maybe we'll give one of these away. Remove the mask. A lot of people thought, we had a bit of a thought on this, like, does that sound a bit too political? Are you trying to say that, oh, no, Anthony Fauci's not right and blah, 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 blah? I don't know. No, we're not saying that at all. We're saying, hey, remove the mask from Shakespeare. But we just thought it's definitely current and something that everybody will get. And so, yes, we're launching that in order to properly give this foundation some kind of a boost, because we need to do that. So 2 weeks from now, Robert Edward Grant. 2 weeks from then, Adam Apollo. I cannot thank you enough, Jamie. This has been a marvelous, very short 3 hours. What a pleasure. I can't wait to see you again live instead of virtual. We haven't seen each other since Egypt, but we will soon, I hope.
Yeah, thank you, Alan. It's been really fun to talk to you as always. It's endless, as you illustrate by every time you present some new piece of information. It's unbelievable how deep all these rabbit holes go. And there's so many of them. And I will just remind everybody what Nassim reminds everybody about everything when they say, what's the one thing I should take away from your 13-hour presentation? And it's to check in with yourself once a day. That's it. Simple. Do the thing where you point the attention into the center of your existence for like 5 minutes. That's it. If you can do it longer than 5 minutes, then you're doing good. Even 1 minute. And a good trick, when you first wake up in the morning, sit up in bed, like you're sound asleep and you wake up, okay, it's time to get up. And you just sit up, and then just sit up and close your eyes. Because you're like pretty much half asleep, or more than half asleep, but you're not asleep. And you can actually hit a zone right then really easily, actually. Because you have to stay awake to stay sitting up. So that's my little tidbit. And the other tidbit is that Nassim Haramein's entire life's work has been put into a free online course. So you can go to resonanceScience.org and check out this free unified science course and learn all about this physics and share it. And yeah, it's right there. It's super easy. And it's, super detailed and in depth. And
there are other courses as well. Robert has a course on there. Adam Apollo has his course on there. I'm going to be having a course coming up on there soon. Lots of other wonderful information.
Yes, the Resonance Academy. And Robert's got 2 courses. I have a course on ancient Egypt called Ancient Egypt Revisited that talks about the ancient technology use, especially at the Great Pyramid, and Abydos at the Assyrian, and the Sphinx.
Wow.
And then Alan, like he said, is going to come out with a course pretty soon. Jonathan Quinton's about to come out with a course. There's a great researcher from Greece, Dr. Lydia, who's going to do a course on ancient temples. So check out Resonance Academy. ResonanceScience.org is the website.
And it's all free?
All the electives
Right now, it is, yeah.
are courses that you can purchase, but the main course that's Nassim's life's work is free. Yeah.
Yeah, exciting. So it really is. It's exciting. There's so much happening. There's such a fertile time to be.
Check out Thrive 2 coming out on September 26th. It's going to feature Nassim Haramein and Robert Edward Grant and the rest of the Resonance Science Foundation research team. And that's been years in the making. And Marshall Efforts, who's also one of the Resonance Academy faculty, did a lot of the animations for that film with Nassim Haramein Consulting. So there's going to be some great visualizations of the toroidal field and the unified field. And that's coming soon. And then there's also Nassim Haramein's series on Gaia called Quantum Revolution. They're on episode 10 of 13 right now. So it ends in October. Check that out on Gaia, which is like the conscious Netflix or something.
Yeah. And if any of you have any contacts that you believe would be appropriate to be, either on the Bardcast or that you just want to let us know about, please let us know. Write to me at Alan at tobeornottobe.org. Write to Jamie at janover.com. I don't know what the email is, but I know he'd love to hear from you. We're all one big family. We are all it. As Shakespeare says, it's all one. So thank you very much, everyone. Goddess bless you. All of us, each and every one. And see you in 2 weeks' time.
Thanks, Alan. Much love to everybody. Thanks for being here.
Thank you, Jamie. Do we end it now? I don't want to. I'll miss them. Well, where do they go when we hit the red button?
The ether.
Hitting the red button.
Is that what we do? Okay, we hit the red button.